Is Shams?
We're live.
Hey, hi.
Hi, everybody.
Wave to Shams. Hey, I don't know if Shams, his profile pic is like actually 8-bit or it's just the enlarging to put it on the screen.
It's definitely not 8-bit. That's like too detailed to be 8-bit.
Well, like
you never saw something like that on Nintendo, did you?
The small version is, but the big version seems like a Nintendo, like Super Nintendo character.
Maybe like, yeah. I don't know. Shams, where did you get this drawing? We'd love to know. Maybe it's like an
I have
AI
a feeling
creation.
it's a degraded. No, Shams has had this since before then. It's just degraded, I think, because it's blown up.
Well, anyhow.
Hi.
Let's do this, Brian. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Got
Can
every
we
player.
do it?
We do it every week.
Why
shouldn't we not? Why not?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean can we like now? You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like doubt. It was just like...
I thought you were like, oh, can we? I was like, I don't know. I mean...
No, we can totally
we can try.
do it.
Are you nervous? Do you ever get nervous before one of our podcast episodes?
No.
Yeah, because you know it's being edited.
Should
also. I don't know.
Is that bad? Once upon a time, I probably did.
Well, especially when we started going live. Like we're recording this live. Like anyone can watch this. If you ever run for political office, someone could go watch this video. And
that's why I keep it clean. Because one day
you never know.
Run for mayor or premier or prime minister or world over.
Or I guess there's like other things where you just want. I guess
person is going to want to try and find a record of me saying something.
Or like
it's not that I don't think terrible things. I just don't say them.
That's all of us.
I know better.
All right, let's do the show. I'm going to start.
You are not your thoughts.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that one?
No, you're not your thoughts?
Yeah.
I don't get it, actually. What does it mean?
I don't know. I'm thinking through it. I heard it.
I feel like you are your thoughts, I would think.
That was my initial reaction, too. But we think things that, like
if you don't act on them,
represent who we are. Like,
what would happen if I push that person down the stairs right now?
Like, that's not who you are, right? That doesn't, just because you thought it doesn't make you that. Yeah.
That's true. Okay, I agree with you. You're not your thoughts. You're your actions.
Are you?
Probably you're a combination of your thoughts and your actions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe that's the next, like, if I'm not my thoughts, then what am I?
I think it's complicated. I think people like to put things down into a little neat box, but it's like you're a lot of things.
A lot of things.
You're your biases. You are your biases. Maybe that would be like, I'll bet you that could take off, even if it doesn't make sense.
My bias.
All right, let's do this.
Shams was.
I have a crazy show idea, by the way.
We should do a Keeping Karlsson yearbook.
What is that? Again, it's like things that sound good but don't make sense.
Well, Shams says he was voted most likely to be prime minister in his high school yearbook. We should have a most likely to section.
But who's like who's eligible? Like
Everyone.
For all the patrons, or just like the people who do the podcasts?
Patrons.
Who's voting? Most of the patrons don't know each other. Well, I guess some know.
We kind of.
Rob C has a community of patrons that have they've had like marriages, like they've had like they have meetups. Our patrons don't really meet up, because there's not like a. Well, I mean, we'd have to do a lot of work probably to make a community that's big enough that people are like making lifelong friendships. There's like group chats. I think some people started group chats.
I feel like there have been
leagues.
some lifelong friendships and like online that's become IRL. But it's a smaller community. I wonder if it's a little like nerdier community.
Mm-hmm. Rob C's community has like more women. I don't know.
That could also be a factor. Like hockey certainly. Yeah. Brings one demographic. But we get the best part of that demographic.
Definitely.
I'm so 100%. Thankful. I'm so grateful. You know what you are? You're not your thoughts. You're not your biases. You are your patrons.
I thought you were going to say you're your community. That one could be. Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I used to think you are your @s, like on Twitter, like the people who like that's who you are. The people who
tweet at you.
The people who like and follow and respond. Like because I was particularly frustrated once upon a time with like someone tweeting something awful and then all the awful people like being like, like, I think maybe that's I think you are your @s.
Well, Well, you are off Twitter now, so you don't even have ads.
Hey, look, Andy had a real life. Put that on the screen.
Sorry, what am I doing here?
Andy had a real life encounter.
I went to a Sox game with someone I met on. Oh, right, yeah. Oh, let's start the show. Also, like, I feel like I used to bring a lot of energy. People used to be like, Elon's. The great thing
really
about keeping
surprised.
Karlsson is the energy.
I mean, that was pre-parent.
Oh God, I've changed.
You didn't think that through.
Sorry, everybody.
I
Whatever. I have
really-
lots of content prepared for this show. We just don't have time to do it because we're too busy chatting.
It shook me
Let's start.
to find out that Andy, when he posted that picture at the Sox game, did not look like Patrice Bergeron.
Okay. All right, let's start. Okay.
Okay.
Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are still waiting to be picked for the all-time podcast. Okay, I should have thought about this before I was going to say it.
Oh
Okay.
gosh.
Who are still waiting to be picked. This is going to be a good joke. Still waiting to be picked in the podcaster's entry draft. Is that a good joke? It's not really funny.
No.
What was your idea again?
Still standing in the schoolyard waiting
Still
to be
stands
picked.
waiting to be picked.
That's
it. We'll
that.
just leave it at that. We don't need to for what. Okay, got it. Okay.
Hang on.
All right. It's good now.
Just okay. Check.
Did your
check.
Cable fall out?
I don't think so. I saw a little thing. I think we're good. Like nothing's changed in Audacity. It would change in Audacity, right? Yeah.
I would assume so.
Check. Okay,
All
we're
right.
good.
Okay. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are still standing in the schoolyard waiting to be picked. I am your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me for another episode where we're going to go through every team in the whole darn league. It's the fantasy hockey robot, the poop of prognostication, the IPP MVP himself, Brian Kahn. Brian, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good. I'm happy to be here with you, Elon. I'm happy to be here with you, listener. Thanks for tuning in again. And like we always sort of get into this routine towards the end of the season where it's like, if you're listening, you're the real ones, right?
Yeah, I said that yesterday.
Yeah. So, that's it. It's a tough time of year where I think many people cut their losses. But hey, if you're not winning your pool and you're still listening, you are getting yourself in shape. Well, it's to still maybe make a run, but also to keep hopefully learning things and watching players and knowing stuff that's going to help you crush it next year. But I'm also probably pretty confident that almost everybody listening has at least one team in the running in a meaningful league to them. I do, which is kind of surprising. It's been anyway. I'm happy. I'm happy. What am I saying anymore?
I don't know what you're talking about. I also disagree. I'll bet you there's at least one
start.
person listening who doesn't have like a league that they're still competing in.
Okay. If you are listening and you're not competing in, like, if you're out of contention and like it's not a dynasty where you're like rebuilding, if you're like just out of contention and there's nothing to gain from being out of contention and you're listening in all your leagues, send us a note or tweet at us or something. And everyone who tweets or gets in touch, however you do,
What's gonna happen?
we're gonna draw a name and we're gonna send you a shirt.
Oh my!
That's what we're gonna do.
A shirt. I thought you were gonna say a sticker or something
Oh.
small. I'll bet you, Brian. There's even, believe this or not. Okay, I bet you there's someone listening who doesn't even play fantasy hockey.
What?
Could you imagine? It's possible. We're talking about hockey. Some people are just hockey fans.
Okay.
I think we're actually not the worst hockey podcast.
I think we're a really good hockey podcast.
We're doing our best. Like, I don't know. I think that you could just listen to us and then kind of know what's going on in the NHL. What's wrong with like being like, oh, I think that Charlie Coyle is not going to keep up what he's doing because Brian said blah blah blah.
How
and then,
dare you? Please apologize now.
Well, Coyle actually is cold right now, so that'll be a fun. Then you'll now say how like you expect it to happen. The next week he'll be hot again. But okay, let's go with the order. Okay, I've also got, along with all this rambling to start the show, of course I have another crazy zany idea for how we're going to do the order this week. I wanted to start the show with the big news that Connor Bedard is back. So I figured since he was the first overall pick most recently, why don't we go back through every single first overall pick until we've covered every team. Okay, and then if once we've already covered a team, and then we get, we're gonna get to Buffalo for 2021, and then we're gonna get to Buffalo again in 2018. We'll be like, oh, Buffalo, we already did them, so we'll go to the second pick. We'll go to Carolina. Okay, that's the plan. We'll see how it goes. I think we'll have a good time here, and we'll give some takes on every team. Of course, we're presented by Dabur Hockey. Thanks so much to them for posting our episodes every week on their awesome website. It's really great, daburhockey.com. But yeah, Brian, let's do it. Connor Bedard back for the Chicago Blackhawks. He is very good at this game that we podcast about. Since he's returned, he had an assist against the Penguins. He had a goal and an assist versus the Sens, 4 shots and 5 shots. He even had a couple hits in each of those games. This is a guy who doesn't even hit that much, but he came back ready to go, Connor Bedard. He has an edge now, a block in each game. He's helping you across the board. If somehow, whatever. Like, obviously you want Connor Bedard. That's not a hot take, but okay, but let's take a look at who he's playing with. I talked about this yesterday on Matchup Maximizer because Chicago has a really good schedule coming up next week. His line is with Nick Foligno and Philip Kurashev, and he's also playing with those guys and Tyler Johnson and Seth Jones on the power play. I'm definitely very interested in Nick Foligno and Philip Kurashev for the short term while they're getting this exposure. Like, Foligno now has points in 5 straight games, just scored a goal against the Sens yesterday in this game where Chicago beat Ottawa. Come on, the Senators. They were starting to show a little bit of life here, but you can't lose to. Anyway, whatever. Chicago's good now. They have Connor Bedard. And then Philip Kurashev, he's also on a great run. He's got 7 points in his last 5 games, also on a 5-game point streak. I don't see a reason, especially with Chicago having that great schedule next week, 4 times, mostly off days. How could you not just want these guys? So I don't know. I'm going to throw it to you, Brian. I'm curious to know what you have to say.
Okay, well, maybe I'll throw just like one little piece at you and say, like, Bedard is on a 72-point pace right now. He's played exactly half a season. Are you taking the over or the under that pace for the rest of the year?
I'm going to go over. I think he's only going to get better and better, more experience. Like, I know you could look into some underlying numbers, and I'm sure you will, and I'm curious to hear if he's been lucky or unlucky, blah, blah, blah. But I think also there's just the fact that he's like an 18-year-old just joining the league. Like, I'm sure every game he plays, he gains a little more experience.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, and it's just like, how quickly can you make use of that experience? And I'm going to dig into the numbers and share my own answer. Spoiler is that it's going to match yours. I'm taking the over. Here's why. It's not because, or not like, this is actually just a fun fact. I don't think it really weighs in a whole lot to what we want to think of Bedard going forward. But Bedard has been on the ice this season at 5-on-5 for 26 goals. Guess how many points he has?
Out of the 26 goals?
Yeah, guess how many he's contributed on?
22.
24. 92% points participation rate.
I guess it's not surprising.
Well, that's it, right? Sometimes we'd be like, oh, well, that's not going to last. It's like, yeah, it is, because Bedard is not scoring.
When he was injured, didn't Chicago have a stretch of like 12 goals in 12 games or something? Like, they don't score without this guy.
Yeah. So if he's not scoring or creating at 5-on-5, then nobody is. So like if Bedard had a 100% IPP, he's like, maybe I want to think about this a little more, maybe, but he's like the only player who I would trust with a 95% or higher points participation rate. That said, they're getting the Chicago's getting wrecked in all situations at 5-on-5 with all lines on the ice, including Bedard. But that's not his fault. He has really strong numbers all around. Personally, he's on the high end of like high average shot generation. Bedard's converting on about 16.5% of his shots at 5-on-5, which, is reasonable to like that could continue. So we'll have to wait and see because he's establishing his baseline right now. But I wouldn't be so surprised if that held. His expected goals numbers are above average. His on ice numbers, as I was sort of just getting at, are terrible. Awful. But that's not him. He's doing his piece. No one else. That's it. That's what's happening. On the power play, too, in Chicago, Bedard has just 8 power play points. And that's because he's only shooting 3.5% on the power play, which, remember, he's shooting almost 17% at 5-on-5. So that doesn't really match up. And his teammates are only shooting 11.5%. There's a lot of quality shots that Bedard is getting off. They're just not scoring. And I think that's why I'm going to take the over for Bedard the rest of the way, because I think some of that power play production is going to come with the 5-on-5 that's already coming. And I think, Bedard could be up for point per game the rest of the season.
Well, there you go. And so that's why you'll want the people with him at even strength and on the power play. Those are Foligno and Kurashev. Go get him. I think they make for really good streams, at least for next week. And maybe holds, especially with Foligno with the hits. What are you doing? Okay. I like it. So let's go to next to, I don't know. Why am I talking? I don't talk like this in my normal life. All right. There you go. I like it. Let's move on. All right. Montreal Canadiens had the first overall pick back a couple years ago. They picked Juraj Slavkovsky, which was looking a little bit not great when they maybe just rushed him into the league. Lately, Slavkovsky doing great. Right? Like, now I don't think anyone's quibbling with this pick. I think a lot of people were like, oh, wow, they should have taken Logan Cooley or whatever, one of the defensemen. But lately, like, Slavkovsky's been playing with Caulfield and Suzuki at even strength. And on the power play, he's up to 12 points in his last 8 games. He had 7 shots in the game versus Washington on Saturday, where Washington won 4-3, 7 shots and an assist. He's on Slavkovsky I'm talking about here. It's like a 8-game point streak right now. A lot of multi-point games in there. And he's only like 19 years old. So I think a lot of people might have to eat some crow, and I think myself included. Like, I think Montreal has a gem here. I mean, obviously you want to give a lot of credit also to Suzuki and Caulfield, who are great line mates to play with. But anyway, Slavkovsky's still not rostered in like too many Yahoo leagues. Like, there's a lot of leagues where you can get him. I'd be curious to know who's in a league where he's still available. But before that, like, I would suggest you just figure out a way to add him. I know sometimes there's really shallow leagues and it's hard, but I can't imagine a reason why you don't want this guy in your team.
It's a pause the pod moment for sure for Slavkovsky. I had the misfortune of being against him in Cupful this week, but I did add him in the league that I am contending in and feeling good about it. And you should too. We already talked about how Slavkovsky's has been on a roll for a while now, but he had recently added minutes and shots to the mix in addition to sort of like steady point production since the All-Star break. And checking in on those minutes and shots, they have stayed. And that's good. We wanted to see it continue. And in fact, Saturday, Slavkovsky played season high 24 minutes and put up a season high 7 shots on goal and also a season high 6 blocks. What? With no penalty kill time.
He's doing everything he can to help the team win.
It's amazing. So, especially at this juncture of the season where you're unlikely to ever find someone who's like a sure shot top line, top power play guy in free agency. Like, maybe you can find a guy who's like there for the next 2 games, but maybe they'll get cycled off. I don't see that happening to Slavkovsky. So that is why you got to go get Slav. And then he'll be slapping out loud.
I had a feeling you were going to go there. All right. So in 2021, it was the Buffalo Sabres who took Owen Power. Owen Power, still kind of waiting on him to make a big impact, at least in fantasy. But in the meantime, we have a question about the Sabres from Blue Line Bomber. Is Skinner worth keeping? Yeah, Jeff Skinner has really gone cold, Brian. He's pointless in his last 4 games, but you go beyond that, he only has 1 assist in his last 8 games. The shots have really gone away over his last few games, like only 2 or 1 shots, just game after game after game. He's getting the deployment with, Tuck and Thompson lately, but at some point, even in a shallower league, if you're competing and you need to win now, Buffalo has a good playoff schedule, but you have to make the playoffs. Like, is Skinner for you someone that's earned enough rope that it's like no matter what happens, you would never drop him in a league like, let's say, the Cupful or even like a slightly shallower? Or are you getting to a point now where you're starting to lose faith in the guy?
I'm keeping the faith in Jeff Skinner, even though he's been ice cold since the All-Star break. And like looking at, obviously I went to look at his career numbers, getting ready for the show tonight. And it wasn't so long ago that he had 2 seasons in a row where basically he averaged out to like a 27-point pace. But I don't, that Jeff Skinner, I think, was a product of the coach and whatever was going on in Buffalo. That's changed. And I think Jeff Skinner is still, all the underlying numbers are still solid with him on the whole this season. But like I said, ice cold since the All-Star break. Only 7 shots for Skinner in his last 6 games. And his minutes over his last 3 games were 15 minutes, and 13 minutes, which is icky. He's still playing, though, as you mentioned, Elon, with Alex Tuck and Tage Thompson. That's good. And even with this cold stretch, I mean, it's not an even with. It's not consolation. The 61-point pace is not what you'd expect from Jeff Skinner. One reason why he's only at a 61-point pace this season. Remember we talked about all those Buffalo guys and how the power play's been cold and that when the power play rebounds, their numbers will rebound. Well, that hasn't happened really for Buffalo entirely, and certainly not for Jeff Skinner. His own power play points haven't come back the way we thought they would. I think he has just 8 power play points through half a season, or over half a season so far. Buffalo as a whole on the power play is 6 for 43 in their last 43 chances. They've converted just 6 times on the power play. That's a 15% conversion rate, which is bad. Buffalo as a whole has barely been scoring. 12 goals in their last 5 games, and 7 of those 12 came in a single night against LA, where Skinner was sadly not in on, couldn't have an impact even with 7 goals. So I think he's going to be, like, he'll be okay. I think he'll bounce back. I wouldn't want to drop him now. So yeah, hold the faith with Jeff Skinner.
Okay, this will be a fun one for Trev to look back on and see if it turned out okay. But I guess for people, you don't even want to wait a month, right? We need Skinner to get going now. It was nice to see Tage Thompson get a couple assists right at the end of that last game against Minnesota in the third, and then in overtime to give us something. So maybe Skinner will be the next one on the team to do so. Okay, let's go next to 2020. We're going to the Rangers, who picked Alexis Lafreniere. He's had a decent-ish season this year. Today, the Rangers won 6-5 over the Islanders in the outdoor game. 2 assists for Lafreniere. So look at him representing his draft. The big news this week from the Rangers was that Blake Wheeler is injured. He's out for the season. Didn't look good. Hopefully he'll be able to heal and play in the league again sometime next year. In the meantime, like, Wheeler wasn't especially fantasy relevant, even though he was playing in a decent spot. He had been playing on the line with Zibanejad and Kreider. It was Jimmy Vesey who took his spot. He was playing there today. Didn't do anything with it. No goals, no assists, no shots. So, I mean, too bad. So it's kind of weird how the Rangers scored 6 goals. I guess, like, that whole line, like, Zibanejad only had 1 goal. So, Kreider had himself a goal. So, yeah, maybe Kreider, by the way, had 6 shots. Zibanejad had 6 shots. This must have been a very exciting game, actually. I wish I watched it. I was out with the family, went to the museum. A little background. But, yeah, as far as the Rangers go, I think the guy that I'm most interested in that's, like, potentially available in any of our leagues at this point might be this guy, Will Cooley. He just hits a lot. So I don't know. I mean, it depends on your league format, but I just want to point out he's a rookie this year, and he's among the league leaders in hits. Another 5 hits today. He was also on a bit of a hot streak going into today. I see no points in today's game, but before that, Cooley, was on a nice little run. 4 points in his previous 3 games. I don't expect the points to continue, right, Brian? But the hits are nice. So it's a name we should probably know. And also, it's spelled Cuylle, and I was told that is pronounced Cooley.
You just took, like, the one thing I was going to say about Will Cooley was just to spell his name in case anybody's looking for those hits. 178 hits through 55 games. He's had 2 or more in almost every game this season. So, yeah, he's helpful there. Like you said, I don't expect the points to keep coming, nor the shots, nor the blocks. Like, he has 3 straight games with at least a block, which hasn't happened at all this season either. So, well, this is a guy. This is a guy who, if you're looking for some hits in your Cats league, you can go grab Will Cooley. Otherwise, I don't think he's of interest to you.
Okay. All right. So, Brian, let's go to the next pick here. 2019, the Devils got a good one in Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes, he's back. He's been back for a little while. He had himself a great week. He and Nico Hischier, both number 1 picks from the New Jersey Devils, both really carrying the team. Them specifically, let me give you the numbers here. Jack Hughes has 5 points in his last 4 games, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7 shots. Like, Jack Hughes' shots are incredible. Hischier's got himself 6 points in his last 4 games, also taking a ton of shots. The Devils, they did not miss with those picks. Though the guy that I want to talk about, who I talked about also with Derek on Short Shifts on Thursday, what a week for Nico Daws. Holy cow. So Vanacek was, like, ill. Then it turned out he also has some minor injury. Daws got the Monday, the Tuesday, the Thursday, the Saturday, and he let in 1, 2, 2, and 3 goals. He got 3 wins. Each of those games, he was above a .930 save percentage. He crushed it this week. If anyone added him in fantasy, you likely won your week. Oh, wait, I added him, and I'm likely going to lose my week. But that's a whole other story. I could blame other players on my team for that. But, Nico Daws looking like, for now, like, when Vanacek comes back, what kind of lunatic would be like, okay, Vanacek, go take a bunch of starts now? Like, no, they're going to have to keep running Daws. at least until he loses. And I was talking to Derek about how Jack Hughes had that quote that it's like easier to win games when the goalie stops the puck, which is like was pretty cutting and
Wow.
also pretty amazing. And Dawes is continuing to do it, and they're continuing to win games. So he's got to be a guy that you want to add, right, in most leagues.
Definitely. The only, like, obviously the caveat, and you already sort of went through his recent record, but 942 save percentage over his last 4 starts for Nico Dawes, including, like, he played on a back-to-back against Seattle and Nashville, 2 pretty decent teams, and LA and Philly were the other opponents, and Dawes had allowed just 8 goals over those 4 games. And so, does New Jersey have a starter now? And if they do, he's really valuable. But Nico Dawes has not played so well for so long before. So let's see. I'll still take it on like a 1 or 2 games at a time basis. And I expect, honestly, if I were Nico Dawes and I heard Jack Hughes say that, I would feel attacked myself. Because, like, Nico Dawes has also, it would feel like an underhanded compliment. Because Nico Dawes has done his fair share of not stopping pucks. So I hope this is the start of something new for Dawes. But we've seen him get, like, a few shakes. And obviously my confidence isn't huge. But in the meantime, while we wait to find out for sure, go get Nico Dawes because you want the New Jersey starter, especially if he's playing as well as Dawes is.
Yeah, like I'm with you. Like definitely this is not a sure thing. He's also like super young. So, it's not as if like he has a big long track. He's not like a Martin Jones where like he's never like been this good. There's no way he'll do it. It's like this is one of his first shots of getting like a lot of games.
True.
So fun to see. All right, so that was the Devils picking Jack Hughes back in 2017. Let's go to 2016.
We should break, shouldn't we?
I had a thought, Brian, about that. The 2 ad breaks, I don't think that they're getting filled. So maybe we should just do 1 ad break per show instead of 2. Like an hour show, maybe. I don't know. Or what do you think? I could do the ad break now.
Just do the break. If it's not getting filled, then like it doesn't matter. It's like a bonus for the listener.
Okay. Well, they hear me being... Okay, it's all right. Okay, so that was 2019 with Jack Hughes. We'll hit 2018 in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back, Brian, going through the annals of history for first overall picks and talking about their teams as we go. We've hit our first roadblock here, 2018. The Sabres got Rasmus Dahlin, but we already talked about the Buffalo Sabres. Don't worry, we have a plan. We're going to go to the second pick. We're going to go to the Carolina Hurricanes. We took Andrei Svechnikov. Svechnikov has had a bit of a tough year this year in terms of injury, but he's back now. Unfortunately, it's like him being back has not helped Sebastian Aho that much. Like I remember before there was a stretch where we were talking about Aho and Svechnikov just tearing up the league. Somehow, pointless in 3 games for Aho. And this is, at a critical time. A lot of people might have like maybe lost their week because they were depending on Sebastian Aho and he didn't even take that many shots. Like he was just basically nothing for this whole fantasy week. I assume, Brian, if like my first thought when I see this is like, time to pounce, like find that Aho manager and try to get him. But probably you would need a longer stretch of him not being successful. But I don't recall a time like this season. He hasn't had a stretch like this, right? I can't even find a stretch of like, oh wait, actually I'm seeing it at the start of December. He had 4 games without a point. But it's very rare to see Aho struggle like this.
Yeah, it is. He's a really consistent player. And like you said, just as we were wondering if he had, capacity to break out beyond that, then we haven't seen a whole lot from him since. But, I'll say what there ever is to say about Aho, which is that he's reliable enough that you don't have to worry, even if he's gone cold. Although I will, like, the one thing I wonder about, and I also wonder if it's just a function of there having been, 0 power play opportunities for Carolina against Vegas on Saturday. His ice time has been below 18 minutes for 2 straight nights, and that is not something that happens too frequently. It did happen back in late December, but aside from that, it doesn't. So I'll watch and see if it stays that low. Again, I think this is just a power play thing, just not enough power play time, which is not his fault. So, that's like the one little thing I'll keep in the back of my mind. And while I'm also just generally assuming if that is not a thing, Aho will bounce back and be his usual self again before long.
Yeah, and my guess is it's not a thing. Like, and we'll see like a 20-minute game coming up soon. In the meantime, some other guys on Carolina are picking up the slack. Like Nechas is super hot, Jarvis, even Jordan Stahl and Martinook doing well. But in the end of the day, I still take Aho, of course. Okay, Brian, next up we go to 2016. No, wait, sorry, we go to 2017. Sorry. Okay. Next up, we go to 2017, the New Jersey Devils. We already talked about them. They took Nico Hischier with that pick. And like I said, he is on a great hot streak right now. So we're going to go to the team who picked second overall. Oof, this was a bit of a swing and the miss for the Philadelphia Flyers taking Nolan Patrick. He is no longer with the team. He is no longer in the league. One guy that was in the league then and is really like on a nice little run right now. And I remember being into him at the start of the year, and then he really disappeared. But lately, Scott Laughton is going again. 5 points in his last 4 games. Anything here, Brian? Or do we just okay, like no chance that this will hold?
Yeah, not much chance. Like Lawton hasn't been doing this all season, and so I don't expect it to continue. We've seen Lawton get hot before. I think this is just another one of those times. Like the shots haven't really changed, the minutes haven't really changed, the deployment hasn't really changed. So just a nice little run here is what I'll call this.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. The really interesting run here. I mean, so Konechny's hot on Philly, no surprise. How about Owen Tippett? And he's someone who was getting drafted super high in a lot of leagues. Remember, Dom Lustian had a really high projection for him, and then I think a lot of people were starting to be a little disappointed that maybe he wasn't playing at the level of his draft position overall on the season. He only has a 55-point pace, but lately, Tippett, if you drafted him and held on, you're getting the value right now where it counts. He had 2 goals and 10 shots in yesterday's game versus New Jersey, where New Jersey did win 6-3. So, that didn't help the team so much, but hey, he definitely helped his fantasy managers. And you look at the shot counts over Tippett's last few games, like 4, 4, 5, like he's going all over the place. He's got 4 points in his last 3 games. So yeah, Owen Tippett doing well. I'll be curious to see now if he ends the year this strong, if next year, he still gets drafted at that same ADP, or if people will be like, I don't know, left a bad taste in my mouth with the slow start to the season.
Yeah, well, but now that Tippett's going, he seems pretty good. So I think it depends. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but it was the end of last year where Tippett was also like looking like he was finishing strong. So I don't know if he's like a back half player and, will fall victim to this several times. I mean, the one thing that cannot be denied about Tippett is like the crazy, crazy shot counts. Like you have to go way back to see a time where he's not taking 4 or 5 on a pretty regular basis. And in his last, I didn't count it up this way, but in his last 15 games, he's had 5 or more shots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. That's crazy, including 2 10-shot outings. 71 shots for Tippett over his last 15 games. He's got 9 goals, which is a 13% conversion rate, which seems reasonable. So if Tippett just keeps shooting, then he could just keep being fantastic. 13 points in his last 15, and I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure his fantasy managers are feeling the same way, Brian. It's wild what Tippett is doing lately. Okay, so let's go now to the previous year, 2016. The Toronto Maple Leafs got Austin Matthews. I think that was a pretty good pick, and Matthews is just tearing up the league right now. Holy cow. Yesterday, in the total trouncing of the Anaheim Ducks, Matthews put up 3 goals and 2 assists for his second straight hat trick, then got benched because I guess the coach was just like, what's the point of even tiring him out? So I was like, you got 5 points, that's enough. So he only played 14 minutes and 52 seconds. But I saw a tweet explaining the reason was just the coach was like, what's the point? So Matthews now, because the thing is, Brian, like I asked you about him, I think it was last week, and I was like, he's pacing for like 70. Do you think he's going to hit it? And then you gave reasons why maybe his underlying numbers were suggesting maybe not. But now that he has like 6 goals since that conversation, I assume your answer has to change?
No. Okay, no. Yeah, it does. It does. I wanted to be like playfully stubborn, and like I still am kind of stubborn because last episode I said Matthews wasn't going to hit 70 because he can't continue scoring on the power play the way that he has been, and like sure enough, he put up 2 power play goals in 3 games since we last spoke of him last week, but also like a lot of even strength goals too. Austin Matthews is scoring at will right now. 3 hat tricks in his last 11 games. I mean, you've seen all the crazy stats and comparisons to how his number of hat tricks this year compares to like entire franchises and players'
Right.
careers.
It was like he has more hat tricks this year than Marchessault has in his whole time with Vegas, and that he's like the leader in hat tricks for Vegas was one I saw that was fun.
Yeah, yeah, and probably like in just Matthews' last 11 games, he has more hat tricks than 90% of the league in their careers. It's amazing. And some guys, when they roll, you don't question. And this is maybe something I should apply to Austin Matthews and just say, hey, he's hot. Like, listen, the numbers don't say he's going to get to 70, but for guys like Austin Matthews, I'm not sure that really matters a whole lot. Like I can be nerdy and dorky and stick to what I think, but he's not so far off that it's impossible. And I also feel like guys of a certain caliber and talent, when you feel it, you feel it. Like that hot hand effect is really there. Plus, I think it's there for the defense and goalies too. I think everybody knows what kind of a heater he's on. And I think there is like some sort of like psychological swing that happens too. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be surprising. It's pretty wild, and we're gonna have a lot of fun next year. Like, I think there's gonna be some debate about first overall. We were just talking recently about how McKinnon was scorching, and maybe even making a case for being picked over McDavid in some formats, depending on what you want to do. And then like now, I think Matthews is inserting himself into the conversation. So yeah, next year might not be the biggest slam dunk. I don't think every cupful division next year is going to take McDavid first overall. I obviously we still have a lot of this season to go, but it might be interesting to see a little bit of a variety. By the way, since we're on Toronto, Brian, who the heck is Bobby McMahon? This guy also had a hat trick a few games ago against St. Louis, and then yesterday against Anaheim, 2 goals and 1 assist. This is only his he's only played 39 games in his career. Doesn't play many minutes, though he did play 15 minutes in the last game, almost as much as Austin Matthews. 4 shots also in this game against Anaheim. Is this the kind of thing where it's like score effects? It's just like whatever. Toronto is trouncing this team. Everyone from the first line to the fourth line is going to do something, or you actually should we be interested in 27-year-old Bobby McMahon?
I don't think we should be that interested in 27-year-old Bobby McMahon. In his last 3 games, he's got 5 goals, an assist, a shot. No, that's not right. Sorry. I've got a typo. Let me fix that. Okay, I'll just start from the top there. No, you should not be that interested in 27-year-old Bobby McMahon. Great name. Such a good name. If I was making up a name, it could be Bobby McMahon, like for myself, incognito. In his last 3 games, McMahon has 5 goals on 11 shots, 1 assist, 13 hits, 3 blocks, and all of them 13 minutes a night, which is really nice and good. But obviously, like if you've been listening to the show long enough, you hear that stat line and you know that it's not anything that can sustain. McMahon's history, undrafted. He was a college grad at a Colgate University where he led his team in scoring in his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th years with the team. Played with nobody else whose name I recognize, though. Then he went to the ECHL. He was undrafted, toiled in the AHL for a few years until this season. Last season, though, in the AHL with the Marlies, McMahon had 21 goals and 8 assists for 29 points in 30 games. So that was good, but that's really the only sign of offense that I've seen through his sort of resume. And I think now he's a depth forward in the NHL, and I expect that's about where he'll stay.
Okay, so fair enough. But he also hits a little bit. I don't know, if you're in a dynasty league and you could like fill a swing spot, maybe someone to look at. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be rushing to grab him in a couple either. Though if Toronto's going to keep scoring 9 goals in a game, that obviously makes a lot of players on the team very interesting. Okay, so Brian, let's go to our next pick here. We get to the Edmonton Oilers, which took Connor McDavid in 2015. McDavid has just been clearly one of the top players in the league year in, year out. And this year is definitely no exception. He has 10 points in his last 3 games. You have the right. He had 6 assists versus Detroit, and then followed that up with 3 assists versus St. Louis, and then a measly 1 assist in the 4-3 win over Dallas. Which at this point, it's like if you get an assist from McDavid in a game, you're like, what a joke. Like, this is nothing for fantasy. But anyways, the interesting thing going on in Edmonton right now, and I talked about this also on Matchup Maximizer because the Oilers have a good schedule to start next week. The lines have been shaking up once again, and Corey Perry, 38-year-old Corey Perry, has been playing on the top line, and not only on the top line, but with a stacked like McDavid Draisaitl. And we don't like the Oilers do this once in a while and it doesn't last. I'd be pretty surprised if this even like holds all week. But in the meantime, Like Perry's doing well, right? He has goals in each of his last couple games. Why not when you're getting feeds from 10 assist McDavid over his last 3 games? So I think Corey Perry is someone I'd be somewhat interested in. If you need to stream someone for next week, why not take the guy playing with McDavid and Draisaitl, right?
I guess that's all it comes down to. Like, I don't think Corey Perry is any more advantaged than any other player we've seen in that spot. And we know that players in that spot may or may not produce. So it depends on the depth of your league and who's available in free agency. Like, I wouldn't go running to get Perry because I think he's going to be the next big thing and win you multiple weeks because he's the third wheel on this line in Edmonton. But if you want to try and stream him for a game or two, it is just pretty valuable by virtue of being alongside McDavid and Draisaitl. He's got 2 goals on his last 4 shots plus an assist in his last 2 games, which, yeah, there you have it.
Okay. Next up, we go to 2014. The Panthers took Aaron Ekblad first overall. Unfortunately, Brian has put the kibosh on any Aaron Ekblad talk on the podcast. So I guess we'll do the next best thing and just drool over Matthew Tkachuk for a little while, just like we did about Austin Matthews. We're up to a streak of 13 points in Tkachuk's last 5 games. And that's just picking 5. I don't know why we would even pick 5 games. I guess because 6 games ago he went pointless. And then before that, you have a whole bunch of more like multi-point games. Matthew Tkachuk has just like, it's insane how different, like looking at his game log from the start of the year and then recently, it's like this guy, I want to know what he did. Like, there probably has been interview, I just haven't seen it about like what sort of changed, or was it just like the luck changed and he changed nothing? But anyways, we're coming off now another crazy blowout game, right? Florida beat Tampa 9-2 yesterday, and so it was 2 goals, 2 assists for Matthew Tkachuk. Sam Bennett also had a great game. Someone who we started talking about maybe you could give up on him again.
I was so close to dropping Sam Bennett again right before that. Like, I think I had an injury or something in the league where I had him. And gosh, it's like you always feel this big Sam Bennett game coming. And then you just hope he's still on your roster when it comes. It's like, yes, I did it.
I mean, he's playing with Matthew Tkachuk. It's like you can't drop him almost just because of that with the way Tkachuk is going. Another player I'll just throw at you, Brian. I don't know if we've talked about him much on the podcast. Stoli the goalie, Anthony Stolars, is like becoming quickly like one of our better like spot start guys. Like I feel like there's a couple goalies who just like whenever I see their name as like, this guy's going to play the next game and it's a backup who barely plays. Like there's like now Calvin Pickard always like raises my eyebrow. Like, I'll bet you that's going to be worth some points. And now like Anthony Stolars, he just shut out the Sabres, 45 save shutout over the Sabres on Thursday. Before that, he didn't play for 3 games, but his 2 previous games before that were also 2 great games, only 2 goals assists. So yeah, he doesn't, 2 goals against, I should say. He doesn't play a lot, but I think he's making a name for himself, at least for fantasy, to me, as like one of your better spot start options that's always going to be available to you in free agency and generally seems to be hitting more, like a lot more often than not.
Yeah, definitely more often than not. The numbers prove it. 926 save percentage for Stolars on the season. He's got 9 wins, and that's in 17 appearances, 15 of those starts. And in those 15 starts, Stolars has 11 quality starts. That's almost a 75%, almost 3/4 of the time. Stolars has given you a quality start, which, Elon, like this isn't so out of line with his career history. Like over his career, Stolars is a 913 goalie with a respectable, well, now it's more respectable because of the season, but a respectable 57% quality start rate. I remember at once upon a time, someone traded for him. I think was it Edmonton back in 1819. Like somebody traded for Stolars and like didn't play him. And I didn't understand why. So anyway, it's good to see him get some turns on a team that's really good, so we can't discount that. But Stolars is definitely doing his part, and yeah, he's kind of. I thanks for pointing him out, Elon. I think he's entered that like Brossois tier, or like the prime Brossois tier of someone who will occasionally start, and when they do, gosh, could they help you?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go now to 2013. The Avalanche got Nathan McKinnon. So again, another guy that is crushing it. Still now, I wonder when we'll finally get to the year where there's like no more really good players. I guess probably after Ovi, there's probably no one left in the league. It's Marc-Andre Fleury, but we'll get there. Anyways, McKinnon is great. On Colorado, though, someone who's cold going into today. I wonder if it's over. Oh no, another pointless game for Cale Makar. Is this the coldest Cale Makar has ever been in his career? I don't know if you had a
Is
chance
the
to look
game
this up.
over?
The game's not over yet. It's 4-3 for Colorado. But if he continues to be pointless, he has 6 shots, which is good. But this will be his 5th game in a row without a point. This is shocking to me. Like Makar doesn't go pointless like this.
No, he doesn't. But I'm glad I was watching the shot count for tonight. Like when I went, like before we went on air, he had 2 shots already in like 7 minutes of ice. I'm like, okay, that's promising. Because coming into tonight, it's Sunday night, Makar had been held to 2 or 3 shots in his last 4 games, which does not happen for many consecutive games. And Elon, it also does not happen that Makar is pointless in 5 games going on 6. The crazy thing is that Makar is still pacing for 96 points, which is the highest pace of his career. But it is really uncharacteristic for Makar to be this quiet or quiet at all. Only twice this season has Makar gone back-to-back games without a point, and he's never gone more than 2 games without a point. I think he's fine. Like 27 minutes. I looked at his minutes. He's still playing 26, 27 minutes a night. It's nice that the shots have come back to confirm that he's also okay. And sorry, this is like more in the context of injuries too. Like I'm like, oh, he's not shooting a lot. So I checked his minutes. His minutes are fine. The shots are fine. So I think Makar is going to be fine. Well, and there's nothing you can do but wait. Just a frustrating, unlucky, unlikely stretch.
Okay, yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I would not be worried about him. I'd be more worried about Sebastian Aho than Cale Makar, for what it's worth. Brian, I guess let's take a break, and then we'll go to 2012. Not a banner year for the NHL draft, actually, in terms of the quality that came out of it. We'll get to that in just a second. Listen, Kimmy Karlsson. All right, everybody. Hello, pals. We are back. 2012, the Oilers got their 3rd first overall pick in a row, and this one was not as good as the previous 2 because they went with Nail Yakupov. And yeah, we know how that turned out. That's actually an interesting draft because 2nd overall, by our rules here, we're going to go to the next team, Columbus Blue Jackets. They took Ryan Murray. Montreal took Alex Galchenyuk. The best pick, the only pick of known players, I guess you get 5th overall, Morgan Riley. Philip Forsberg comes at 11th. But yeah, anyways, by our rules, we're going to go to the Columbus Blue Jackets because they went 2nd with Ryan Murray. And I guess the news out of Columbus is, first of all, they have had an outjury. So Chinnikov is back. So the Blue Jackets have gone back to playing Chinnikov, Marchenko, and Voronkov together. I recorded yesterday's matchup maximizer before Columbus's game against San Jose had started. So I was like, because Columbus has the best schedule of the week, by the way, next week. So you definitely want to stream in someone from Columbus. And I was mentioning that line is interesting. And look at that. Chinnikov, 2 assists. Marchenko scored a goal. Voronkov scored a goal. I like all 3 of those guys. Brian, so we know the studs are hot on this team right now. Jenner is crushing it. Gaudreau's doing great. Werenski's doing great. Assuming none of those guys are available in your league, you're looking at next week's schedule. You could have any other Columbus Blue Jacket aside from those 3. Who are you going with?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that every one of those other guys has let me down. So, like you mentioned, Chinnikov and Marchenko. Like Marchenko obviously has slowed down huge since the run he had a couple months ago now. And there's nobody else that's reliable. But there are guys who have let us down many times before. And Elon, I'm sorry to say that I'm kind of actually leaning towards one of those guys who has never, ever held up his end of the deal. But I'm seeing Jack Roslovic playing on the top line tonight with Gaudreau and Jenner, and also on what to me looks like the top power play, but had less time than Voronkov, Marchenko, and Chinnikov. So that's where I'm sort of and Roslovic, to his credit, he has in his last 2 games he's played 22 minutes, 18 minutes. He has a goal and an assist and 10 shots in his last 2 games. So, Elon, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 1,000 times, shame on Jack Roslovic still. And I'm willing to be shamed again.
I'm very confident you're going to be wrong with this.
Me too. I'm so confident. Me too. I'm extremely confident I'm going to be wrong with this. But
I don't think
also,
that line will hold. But we'll see.
The only reason that I'm going with Roslovic is because I think it also demonstrates the faith that I have in Chinnikov, Marchenko, and Voronkov to be consistently productive too.
Okay. My pick's Marchenko, if I had to pick one.
Yeah. That's my that's my head pick. Or
Okay,
the
but
gut
heart
pick.
says-
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know which one's which
What's
here.
the difference at this point?
Yeah, Columbus. It's Columbus.
All right, so 2011, Oilers again, and they took Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, still on the team, still doing great. We already talked about you, Oilers. They got a lot of first overall picks. I think this team would have won a cup already with all these first overall picks.
Don't rub it in.
Anyway, second overall was Colorado. We've already talked about them. This is what Brian was warning me about, by the way. He thought it was going to be too much of a journey. I'll be curious to hear back. Like, is this a fun going on the journey? I don't know. You let me know. Next, Florida, they took Huberdeau. What I said. So Colorado took Landeskog. We've talked about them. Florida took Huberdeau. We've already talked about them. Devils took Adam Larson. We've already talked about them. New York Islanders, fifth overall, Ryan Strome. Remember that? Ryan Strome's still in the league. He's on a bit of a hot streak. Obviously not with the Islanders, with the Ducks. But in the meantime, we get to talk about the New York Islanders because of our rules here. Brian, they had a game today, like I said, this Stadium Series outdoor game versus the Rangers. I was going to talk about, obviously I prepped the show before, we saw these results. It was 6-5 for the Rangers. I was going to talk about how Kyle Palmieri is super hot. How is it the Islanders scored 5 goals? Nothing for Palmieri. I don't know, maybe he's like, you're off the show, Kyle Palmieri. How about that? That's what you get for being pointless today. Matt Barzal, he scored. He's still hot. Like, Barzal, okay, here's my question to you. Matt Barzal is now after another point today. That brings him and his hot streak to 9 points in his last 7 games. That brings his season pace to 88, but it's like climbing, right? Like it just keeps getting higher and higher. Like, where do you think Barzal is getting drafted next year? Because also I just love how this year he's become a shooter, right? I think we talked about this before. He's now averaging 3.1 shots per game. He's never been above 2.5. So things have really changed. Another 3-shot game for him today. He had a 7-shot game a couple games back. Has Barzal like made himself into like a second, maybe not second, like third round pick in couple next year?
Yeah, it's a valid question. And Barzal has been like, I know about also that like there are times this season that I stared at Barzal at the draft table and I did not take him. And it feels bad now. But Barzal has been fantastic, and one thing that's crazy about what he's doing is that, like you said, Elon, Barzal has upped his shot attempts and shots on goal, but without sacrificing shot quality, and is only shooting 7% at 5-on-5, and his line is shooting only 7% as well. So we're not even seeing the full benefit of these extra Barzal shots yet. And speaking of those on ice numbers, well, Barzal is on the ice for 90 seconds more a night at 5-on-5 this year compared to last. His line is the best line he's ever been on. And they're like beyond that, very good. They're not quite an elite top line in the NHL, but they are in the top like echelon. They're in the upper echelon right now, Barzal's line. And another thing that's gone really well for Barzal is the power play production has been super strong. It's basically been weak since Barzal's rookie season. And I don't know if you remember, we've talked about this a few times on the show, and it's because like that's when Tavares was around. And ever since Tavares left, it's like the Isles have been like their power play has no soul. So now the soul seems to have returned, and I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but Barzal already has 19 power play points, which is one short of the second best power play season he's ever had. His best was that rookie year where he had a career high 27 power play points. So all that Barzal's doing is sustainable, and I think he has more. I think there's more he could do here. So I might even say I will take the over on Barzal beating his current pace, which, what did you say, Elon? 90
88?
88
he
points?
Could do better than that, yeah.
Yeah. I think he could do better than that the rest of the way. So where he gets drafted next year, great question. This year, he was drafted 123rd on average in the Cupful. That's in the middle of the 8th round. The earliest, though, this is crazy. The earliest someone took him was 70 picks before his ADP, 52nd overall. But they're laughing. They did it. They reached and they did it right. 52 sounds right for next year. Like, for context, the other forwards going just before that were Nugent Hopkins and Aho, and the guys going after were Kyrou and Fiala. So 52nd would be like late 3rd round. right? I'm doing that math right. But I think there's even a case to take him before. Like I think Nugent Hopkins and Aho is probably a pretty reasonable place for Barzal to have landed, and we'll see. We'll see if he can do over what he's done so far for the rest of the season. What a season!
Yeah.
What a year for the guy.
Yeah, and by the way, also, I guess another fun question is like, who's going to get drafted first next year between Barzal and Noah Dobson, who is actually also pacing for 88 now after another huge game today, 3 assists versus the Rangers. Dobson is like incredible. he's also shooting not as much as Barzal, but 2.3 shots per game. He gives you those periffs. Obviously, D is harder to fill. You know, as much as we've just lauded Barzal, maybe Dobson should be picked first.
Also on that soulful top unit on Long Island now. And I also want to give both these guys credit, or at least coaching credit or whatever, because they have continued. Like when the coaching change happens, you're like, oh no, like we had a good thing going. And that thing has continued going uninterrupted for Dobson and Barzal. So good for them. There's, for any concern there might have been around that, it's gone. So yeah, fantastic. Good stuff.
Good stuff, Islanders. Except they lost today, so too bad. Okay,
doesn't
so Brian,
matter for my fantasy team.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you had Sorokin, who didn't have a stellar game. Okay, so next up, I think these outdoor games, maybe you don't want the goalies there. So the Oilers again in 2010, they took Taylor Hall. Enough Oilers. Next up, the Bruins picked Tyler Seguin. And then he had a storied career with the Bruins. Oh, wait, no. I mean, he won a cup with Boston, right? But anyway, let's talk about the Boston Bruins. Okay, I mentioned it at the start of the show. Let's do it. Let's piss people off and talk about how now Charlie Coyle's cold. He was like, we were saying like, we're done. We were like, enough Charlie Coyle. Like, obviously grab him. He's incredible. Like, this guy's in such a great position. How could he not keep up this run? So, of course, now he's pointless in 4 games. And if you look at the latest lines, Coyle was not on the top power play. So he lost that spot. Do we risk Brian now saying, all right, it's time to move on and drop Charlie Coyle? Or are we like just setting ourselves up to look dumb in a week?
I think there's honestly flip a coin, Elon. I think Charlie Coyle's like we talked about last time, right? He was exposed to Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak, and we thought that was going to be enough for him. But he's been playing with Marchand and Heinen lately, which isn't Marchand Pastrnak. And he has no points to show for it in 3 games. He wasn't shooting a lot before. He's still not shooting. I think this is just sort of the way it goes. I think this is the life of a third wheel, right? What we said about Corey Perry earlier still applies for the most part here with Charlie Coyle. Except I think Charlie Coyle might even be more likely to be bumped up and down the lineup.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. I mean, wait, sorry. Let me say, did you say Corey Perry or Charlie Coyle is going to be more likely to be bumped up and down?
Coyle.
Oh. Huh, interesting. Yeah, I could see Perry being like a 4th liner, but I think, anyway.
Both are pretty likely. I think Perry would be
Coyle's
like
demoted.
A top sixer. Yeah, I think Coyle can be like a useful middle sixer, right? Like if they need someone to like shore up and help out, Coyle can be given that assignment. Whereas Corey Perry, it's like, what else are you going to do, man?
Right. Okay, let's go to 2009, and the Islanders took John Tavares 1st overall. And we just talked about the Islanders. We can move on to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who had 2nd overall and didn't do too badly, taking Victor Hedman. Hedman having himself a good year. You know who? I know we've talked about this before, but just to reset, Vasilevsky is not having an amazing season. And after his like brutal showing against Florida, where he led in 6 goals on 22 shots before getting pulled, that pulled Vasilevsky below 900 save percentage on the season. He's now sitting at 899. Like, this is unheard of, right? Like, when's the last time? You have to go back to 2015-16 for a season that Vasilevsky was less than a 915 save percentage. So, I don't know, going into your fantasy playoffs, Brian, is it like, do you trade for Vasilevsky, and be like, hey, now you're going to get him cheap? Or is it like, maybe just stay away? I'm curious to get your thoughts on the guy who, before that led in 3 goals against Colorado. Then before that, he had 3 good games. So I'll tell you, my answer is going to be to like try to pounce on the frustrated manager. This game like this won't happen all the time. You're not always going to be playing against Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, you're not. They're in the same division, though. I don't know how many games Tampa and Florida have
That's true. They
remaining
both
to
play
play.
sometimes. Yeah.
So there's still more Matthew Kachuk in Vasilevsky's future. This season he's still playing above his expected number at 5-on-5, and his expected number is about as low as last season. By number I mean save percentage, and it's been lower this season and last than it really has been for the rest of Vasilevsky's time in Tampa. But last year he really answered the call, and this year he's average versus expected, which is interesting to say, right? Given how bad his regular, like his all situation save percentage looks, even shorthanded, like Vasilevsky is still not doing awful relative to expectation, but his number is still bad. Like he's an 852, which is his lowest shorthanded save percentage number of his career so far. Same thing at even strength, 912 at even strength. Not terrible compared to expected. It's actually above expected, but the worst 5-on-5 save percentage he's had. So what to do? I don't know, Elon, just before Jake Gensel was injured, I was in a league where I was offered Vasilevsky for Gensel. And I was like, oh, like hard pass, like no way. I don't need that. And then Gensel got injured, and I was sort of sad that I didn't take
how
that.
Can
like,
you know?
Yeah. But I think, like would I trade injured Gensel for Vasilevsky at this point? Like, yeah, because I need the wins. And I think I would trade some other guys. Like I countered with Evander Kane for Andrei Vasilevsky, and then like 3 days went by without a response, so I just pulled the deal. But like that's something I'd feel comfortable doing. But I think most people would also. I don't want to give up a lot for like goalies are still hard to value, especially a struggling goalie. So I wouldn't try and like aggressively buy low in Vasilevsky. But if you find a frustrated or impatient enough manager, yeah, kick some tires.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's always like kind of weird when like the best goalie this week was Nico Dawes, and everyone could have gotten him for free. So, but obviously you have to then
That exactly.
yeah. But at the same time, like maybe it's nice to just have someone that you'd hope you could set your watch to. But Vasilevsky, obviously in that last game, gave a lot of people negatives. Okay, so I guess let's do a couple more before we take our next break here. So in 2008, sorry, a lot of negatives. Also in Tampa, Brian, how about Anthony Cirelli and his current streak? 6 points in his last 5 games. He was all like, it goes even further, right? Cirelli's like around 10 points in his last 10 games. He went from just zeros all the time to like ever since January 18th. He's pointing all the time. I feel like we've seen this before, but are we at a point now where you just have to jump on Cirelli, or are you like just super confident that this is like gonna not last like usual?
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Hagel was the rare Tampa forward who transcended like our mistrust. Kind of, it was like, yeah, we think he can be reliable, and it's so rare to say in Tampa about anyone who's not Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point. Like, remember, like we tried to say it about Palat, we tried to say it about Tyler Johnson, we've tried to say it several times about Anthony Cirelli, we've tried to say it about Nick Paul. Like, none of these guys has passed that threshold except Brandon Hagel. And this is all to say, I'm not sure Cirelli has entered Brandon Hagel territory.
Fair, but it's our job, Brian. We got to point out the hot streaks, and it's a nice run right now for Cirelli, who obviously is a very valuable player to this Tampa Bay team. Okay, so next up, I guess there's Tampa Bay again because they had first overall in 2008, took Steven Stamkos, so we've already covered them. So then we could go second overall was the LA Kings, and they got Drew Doughty, who we haven't talked about. So we can go to LA, who just pulled off a comeback win against the Penguins. It was right? Yeah, it was 1-0 for Pittsburgh. They scored in the first, and then 2 goals from Adrian Kempe today, including a shorthanded one with like 3 minutes to go to give the Kings the win. Brian, don't look now. Cam Talbot had his first good game in a while. I don't know if that's going to mean anything. It's like 2 straight wins now for the Kings. It was a lot higher scoring affair in their game yesterday. But yeah. Anyways, the player I wanted to talk about actually was a question from Mr. Peanut Butter, Pete, who's here in the chat right now. And he wanted us to talk about Kevin Fiala because he is on a bit of a cold streak. And this is not something we're used to seeing from Fiala in the second half of the season, right? He's like our poster boy for players who do so much better in the second half. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not happening for him this year for the Kings. No points again today. That brings him now to being pointless in 5 games. Yeah. What's up? What's up with Fiala? Is he going to turn this around? Or is this... I guess I should mention the lines really quickly because Victor Arvidsson came back. Probably I should also check in on Victor Arvidsson. But Fiala was playing with Kopitar and Kempe and on the top power play. You can't really get better deployment on the Kings. So that, I guess, is a reason to be interested in Fiala. I will mention, by the way, Victor Arvidsson, 2 games in a row with an assist. And he's had great shots in his 3 games since returning. So good for Victor Arvidsson. But yeah, let's get to the Fiala question. What do you think, Brian? Would you be nervous, or do you think he's the second half Fiala we know and love is about to emerge?
I think he's still there. Like he's been snake bit since he came to LA for his shooting percentage. He's shooting basically like 8.5% as an LA King over 120 games. Where in Minnesota he was generally, his last couple years in Minnesota he was around the 12-13% mark. So that's a 5% difference, and that's not unsubstantial. On ice for Fiala, like remember he's been kind of in nowhere land line wise for a while. His teammates are shooting just 7% while he's on the ice. Although I have to say his on ice line numbers do look pretty solid, like better than I would have guessed for having played, substantial time with like Laferriere and Dubois and Deneau and more. But it seems like LA wants to get him going, which is why he's up there playing with Kopitar. And I think that's a good sign. I think that's Kevin Fiala is not being banished because he's cold. He's being encouraged. So I'd look at that as a positive. And we should mention, like with Fiala, Kempe, Kopitar on the top line, that displaces Quinton Byfield, who moves down to play with Laferriere and Pierre-Luc Dubois. So that hurts Byfield in the short term. Dubois had 3 points in 2 games coming into today's game against Pittsburgh, which I'm not sure if it's over. But he had...
It's over. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, no points today for Dubois.
And only 1 shot.
I think you got to keep the faith with Fiala. Like, I don't... Again, I see it as encouraging. Like, that's what I'm reading into the line combos, that Fiala's been promoted to try and get rolling. I'm not seeing anything in his numbers to suggest, like, that he's playing worse than usual or deserves as bad as he's getting.
All right, Brian, what do you think? If someone added Cam Talbot like me as a Sunday snoozer, by the way, I lost my matchup by like 1 fantasy point. So bummer for me.
I'm
Everyone
so
feel
sorry.
bad for me, please. Thank you. But if you added Talbot today as a Sunday savior and he did really well, do you hold him now and hope that he gets the start versus Columbus on Tuesday? Or do you think that probably they're going to go back to Riddick?
I don't. Well, why wouldn't they go back to Riddick? Like that.
Talbot just had a great game and he won.
Okay, but what did Riddick... So Talbot played because it's a back-to-back. Right? Mm-hmm. And in the game before this, Riddick, well, I get, okay, fine. He won, but he wasn't great. Yeah. I have a feeling that neither Talbot or Riddick are going to consistently be good.
Right. I'm just talking about
call me crazy. But
I'm just thinking about Tuesday.
If you're thinking about Tuesday, yeah, you could hold on to him until Tuesday. I think you might be disappointed.
Yeah, it would be such a bummer if I hold him and then all of a sudden he's not even playing. It's like, I dropped someone else when I could have dropped him.
And it's hard. Like there hasn't been enough of this. Well, Talbot hasn't played well for so long, so we don't know what happens after a start where Talbot plays well. And he played well because it was he played only because it was a back-to-back. So because he outperformed Riddick in the back-to-back, does he get to go next, or did Riddick win so he gets to come back in? There's Elon, I don't know. I would say I don't know. What do you think? I was trying to even give odds, and I'm having a hard time.
I think Talbot will play the next game. Why not?
Is that wishful thinking? Like, is that because he's on your roster?
No, it's because, like what we've said. I just have a hunch that Riddick's last game was bad. Talbot's last game was good. Why not ride the hot goalie? Ellie needs to just try to win, and it seems like he's David Riddick, right? It's not like we're talking about Connor Hellebuck here. So I feel like Talbot was in the All-Star game. Like, maybe it behooves the Kings to try to get Talbot going again. So if he has a good game, try to build on that. So it's a hunch, but obviously, like you say, Brian, it's like maybe 60-40 for me. I'm not saying I'm super confident. But Brian, look at this. We're done with our content for the first half of the show. We've made it to 2008. Let's see if, challenge for the listeners. Can you remember who was picked first in 2007? Spoiler, it was the same team we started the show with. So now that should be a pretty easy quiz for you. But anyways, let's take a break a long break, a whole break where you're going to have to go download another episode, but it should already be there in your feed. So part 2 will be waiting for you. Please be subscribed to Keeping Karlsson to get all of our content, including part 2, including Matchup Maximizer. I did a fun one yesterday, took over from Jeremy, who had done the last couple. Then there's going to be short shifts this week. Like, we are keeping the content going all through the season. We'd love for you to be there with us on the ride. So we'll be back in just a second for part 2. Bye. All right, pal, at your leisure. By the way, you were so annoyed.
Check.
Tell me if I was correct. Were you like really annoyed with that one team, that one draft where there was like 5 teams before we got to Ryan Strome?
It was just like a little, like I told you. No, it was just
I thought it was like a fun, like, to me, I thought it was fun, but I saw on your face you were like, this is not fun. This is like
I think
boring.
it could be fun and better.
Because there's going to be more of them this side, obviously, as we go. But I like them. But I don't know. Listeners, let us know, because I'm just
it's
curious.
Fine. No one
let
cares.
me know in the chat. I just want to know. Just do you want me to just like switch now to going alphabetical or something, or do you want to go on these fun, like, no, I shouldn't bias it, or should we go on these like long runs of like, well, we already talked about Chicago.
Okay, listeners, do you want me to do
Philly.
like the stupid boring thing, or should I do like the fun awesome thing?
That was a mistake. I didn't mean to do it that way. All right. Well, we'll go until
You're
it sounds
a wreck.
like it's getting annoying.
You have been like such a consistent person my whole life that I've known you. Like, this is like a real.
I care about your feedback. It shakes about what you think about me. I just want to do what makes Brian happy. But anyways, okay,
I think
Connie's
you're more interested in doing what makes the listeners happy.
That's true.
Which should be more important in this circumstance.
I mean, it depends how unhappy I make you. I definitely don't want to like put our friendship on the line.
I'm fine with it. I am fine with it. I'm not saying I don't like the journey. I'm saying the journey could be a little.
How would you do it? Can you give me an example of a journey?
Well, no, I need to be prepared. I would need to be prepared. I don't want it to sound like you're experiencing it and realizing it as you go. I want it to be like, I know all this.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, I'm going to sound for this next one. I'm going to be like, you're not even going to have any idea that I didn't know. Let's go. All right, let's do it.
I also don't care.
Okay.
I trust you.
Okay.
Should that be the start of the second? Just a big sigh?
Yeah. Do it.
Okay. I'm not going to do it. I'm tempted. Are you serious?
No, just
okay.
I don't care.
Yes! Welcome to our second part of the Sunday Mega Show. My name's Brian Com, and I'm here with my co-host, Elon Dabrowski. We are roughly halfway through the NHL, going through our list of teams, taking our new weekly tour. This tradition we have. By the way, feedback, listeners, if you're still into the idea where we visit all 32 NHL teams in an episode, that's great. I don't know. Like, let us know if you don't like it or you do like it. We could use both. But anyway, we've chosen to organize things this episode by going back. It's starting with Connor Bedard and then looking at all the first teams to pick in each draft since. And if we've already covered the team, then we go to the team that picked after that team, which is a honestly truly exciting journey for me when Elon goes and talks about it. I feel like I can't wait to find out who the next guy is. It's a great trip down memory lane. And Elon, we left off in 2007, and I'm excited to pick right back up there. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready. I got it open. Right. I know it by heart already and ready to present. So in 2007, of course, that was the last time that the Chicago Blackhawks had the first overall pick. And like Connor Bedard, they did not miss on this shot. They got Patrick Kane. He had an incredible career, which isn't over. He's actually on a hot streak right now when we eventually get to Detroit. But in the meantime, we already talked about Chicago to start the show. Then JVR went to Philly. We already talked about Philly. Next up, Phoenix Coyotes, a.k.a. Arizona Coyotes, for our purposes, went with Kyle Turris. And so that's where we're going to go next, over to Arizona, to not talk about Kyle Turris, who's, I guess, been out of the league for a while now. I remember my wife's dad was really annoyed that the Sens traded away Kyle Turris. He was part of that Matt Duchene trade, right? I think he was like, why did they have to include Turris? I feel like I had that conversation with him at some point.
They both ended up playing in Nashville. I don't think Turris was in the Duchene deal.
Who did Ottawa send in that deal? Okay, you look it up while I'm going to talk about some current Arizona Coyotes. But I guess the biggest news out of Arizona is that Connor Ingram is hurt. So that means that Vejmelka has been playing a few games. Another loss today. He also didn't do well on Friday. I guess today he wasn't like so terrible. 37 shots against the Avs, led in 4. Anyways, he kind of stinks. Kind of a bust here. The backup right now, who's going to play tomorrow, since it's a back-to-back for Arizona, is a guy named Matt Villalta, who played his first ever NHL game on Friday after Vejmelka got pulled. 4 shots against Carolina. He stopped all 4. 100% save percentage on the career. Not too bad. I'm looking at his Frozen Pool page right now. Smuggest little grin I've ever seen on one of these hockey profiles. This Matt Villalta guy loves himself, according to this picture at least. Also, his hair kind of looks like our old Keeping Karlsson logo, like kind of similar to that Erik Karlsson hair. This is a picture. I don't know. This picture's like really like it's like this should be in an art gallery. It's making me feel lots of things. But anyways, Brian, who is Matt Villalta, and how confident are you in taking him for a spot start tomorrow?
I don't know. I need to spell his name first.
Villalta. Villalta. It's like Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Right.
Except a
Just
little different.
Vil instead of per.
Yeah.
It's like basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Similar
I have no idea if
smugness.
this is all on mic or not, but I'm
It
going to.
is, yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Why not?
Elon, Matthew Villalta was drafted by LA in the 3rd round, 72nd overall back in 2017. And he was in that system for real up until this year with playing with Ontario of the AHL, like getting a healthy amount of games and not doing so terribly. This season, so far in 34 games with Tucson of the AHL, Villalta has a record of 22-11-1 and a .913 save percentage, which is pretty solid. So 3rd round pick, decent AHL career. There's some pedigree. This guy isn't nobody. So he's 24 years old, which is a decent time for a goalie to be getting a look at the NHL. So I wouldn't write off the possibility that Villalta could be good. And Vejmelka hasn't been anybody who can't be outdueled this season. So I'll be curious to see if Villalta can justify sort of inserting himself into a bit of a crease, becoming a contender for starts in the Arizona crease in the time that Ingram is out.
Yeah, but maybe it'll be fun to see him in his first game tomorrow.
Also, Kyle Turris was in the so Turris. I couldn't imagine him in an Avs jersey, and that's because it was a 3-way trade with Nashville, right? So Turris went to Nashville, Duchesne went to Ottawa, and then the Avs got Sam Girard, and he's the and Bo Byram. Those are the two sort of big gets from the Avs in that deal. Seems like a deal that Oh no, sorry, just cut that out. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also on Arizona, a sad cold streak to report. Arizona had this great schedule this week, 4 games all on off days. I had Sean Durzi in my lineup. 1 stray apple, and I'd have won my matchup, but no, pointless throughout this whole matchup for Durzi. He's now pointless in 7 games. Should have dropped him for freaking Matt Dumba, who had a goal and an assist today against Colorado. He hits a lot. I'm a little frustrated, Brian, with Sean Durzi. Is he becoming a snoozer at this point? He's still in the top power play, but geez. And also, I'll throw a name of someone who's not on my team, but I'm sure a lot of people are frustrated with. Another guy who went pointless for this 4-game stretch is Barrett Hayton. I think a lot of people are waiting on for him to get back to how he was for, what was it, a month last year, 2 months last year. But I don't know. This was another very disappointing week for him, and I wonder if he also is becoming a snoozer. I guess, yeah. What do you think about Hayton and Durzi at this point?
Durzi, no. Durzi's not snoozing. I think he's still definitely worth rostering. Hayton, I mean, we've given him a shot. He played 20 minutes tonight against Colorado, which is easily the most he's played since coming back to the lineup.
And he was with Keller. Keller and Kerfoot.
And he had 4 shots. And I'd say that's promising. And 6 minutes on the top power play. All right. So I think that's probably, a big reason for the big minutes. They didn't score on the top power play, but they did generate 8 shot attempts. So that's a start. And playing with Keller, I'm just seeing how that line performed. Ooh, not well. They lost the shot attempt battle 5-2. So that's not great. That line was not successful. So we'll see if they run it back again. Of course, it's against Colorado. I mean, but the big joke on all of us this season was we saw like this perfect schedule for Arizona this week, and then they go ahead and score a total of 8 goals in 4 games. And so there's just Elon, like, honestly, after the first game against Philly, they scored 3 goals. But I was already like, you know what we didn't say? We didn't say that, while naming all these 12 Coyotes or 10 Coyotes who are kind of all things equal, like just grab one and stream, is that Arizona just might not score a whole lot. And that's unfortunately what happened for anybody who tried to take a swing on those guys and really, really felt it, right? Because you were so proud of yourself and hopeful. And then Arizona just had a bad offensive week.
Bummer. Okay. Next, let's go to a more defense talk. St. Louis drafted Eric Johnson with the first overall pick in 2006, still in the league. So I guess you can't say it's too bad of a pick. Speaking of St. Louis and defensemen, do we have to be into Torrey Krug again? He was cold forever. I'm sure dropped in the large majority of leagues, but he had a 5-assist game versus Montreal back on February 11th in the 7-2 win. And since then, a goal and an assist versus Edmonton, had an assist yesterday versus Nashville, a power play assist. He's getting the top power play time. So I guess, does this mean now time to get back on Torrey Krug?
I don't think so.
This is the excitement in my voice as I'm saying.
Yeah. Like, call me when Krug is shooting, right? That's his, like, even if the power play points hold, which is great, and Krug can keep up like a 45, 50-point pace, still fringy if he's taking, between 0 and 2 shots a game. So, like, in the short term, you could go grab Krug, especially if power play points are important to you and you need help on defense. Like, he's not nothing. He is probably climbing through the free agent ranks of being somebody worth taking a chance on, but I still see pretty limited upside for Krug, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat here, I think Shams has nailed it. Like, with Falk and Prunovich hurt, like, this is, I guess, Krug is getting a lot of minutes, right? He played like 23 minutes and 47 seconds in the last game, 26 minutes the game before. So it's like, yeah, if he's going to get a lot more ice time, that's going to increase his chances to get points. He's also getting more power play. So maybe now is a good time to grab Krug, but he might not end up being a hold long term. On the flip side, like Colton Parayko was looking so great for a while, and now he's kind of cold. So, but that's not surprising. I mean, Colton Parayko hasn't been worth holding for a full season for a while now. So let's go to the next player here that was drafted 2005, Sidney Crosby. Wow, that's 19 years ago, Brian. 2005. Next year is gonna be the 20-year anniversary of when Sidney Crosby was taken first overall. This year is the 20-year anniversary of Alex Ovechkin being drafted first overall. Spoiler for who's coming next. But Crosby, like Ovechkin now, having another just incredible season. I'm starting to see tweets coming out about how like he's having one of the most productive seasons for a 36-year-old, and I'm sure next year he'll have one of the most productive, for 37 and a 38. Like, there's no sign of Crosby slowing down at all. He's up to 55 points in 52 games, scored a goal today. Like I mentioned before, the power play goal against the Kings. I guess the big news, though, you mentioned it before about Gensel being injured on Pittsburgh, so worth checking in on the lines. Today was Crosby with Raquel and Brian Rust. So that's interesting for Raquel to get back into the top 6. I guess he had to with Gensel injured, and then Malkin's playing with Riley Smith and Drew O'Connor. Top power play, Raquel was there as well with Malkin, Crosby, Rust, and of course Erik Karlsson. So I don't know. Raquel isn't doing anything, right? He had 2 assists in the game against Chicago, but aside from that, he's been cold for a while. Is this like, I don't know, are you rushing for Rickard Raquel? Or also, they just lost today, so to Cam Talbot. So maybe this is a sign that they're going to shift things. They've been shifting things around a lot. So I guess my takeaway would be to just not bank on anything until things kind of settle.
I think that's it. Like, right now in Pittsburgh, there's just like a lot of guys in the mix that I looked at and then decided that none of them really interest me. I mean, you mentioned Raquel, and I think maybe he's the best bet. Just because he was seeing power play time tonight. He had 2 points at Chicago on Thursday. And then I looked at Riley Smith as another guy who's like nothing doing there. Drew O'Connor, undrafted 25-year-old, 2 assists in 2 games coming into tonight, was playing with Malkin and Riley Smith, but also like not feeling that confident that he's going to be worthwhile. And by the way, Malkin himself, I don't think he got anything tonight towards the end of the game. But last I saw, he had no points in his last 3 games, only 5 shots. He's 37 years old and has a point in his last 5 games. And like this sounds bad for Malkin, and it's just I have Malkin, and it's like it's rare. I'm not saying like Malkin is washed or anything, because this is just the second time that Malkin has gone 3 games in a row without a point this year. I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering out loud. I think he's going to be fine, but through the year, Malkin has generally had either Rust or Raquel, and now he has neither. Both those guys are playing up with Crosby, and so Malkin's playing with Riley Smith and Drew O'Connor, who are both guys I need to see their first names to clarify who I'm talking about, which isn't a great sign. So Malkin is someone I'll be keeping an eye on and hoping he can find his game while he feels the effects of Gensel being out, even though they didn't play a whole lot together at 5-on-5.
Yeah, definitely something to watch. Maybe the lines will also just change up, like I was saying. After a loss, maybe they get Malkin some help if he's having trouble. I think I said Malkin. I'll stick with it. I'm not going to edit that. Okay, Brian, let's go to the Washington Capitals now. 20-year anniversary of them getting Alex Ovechkin, the great 8, who's on an 8-game point streak. Look at that. Everything just really fits today. Yeah, Ovi definitely has figured out whatever was bothering him to start the year. He's got some pip in it. I guess like what you said about Austin Matthews. Maybe he's hot, he's confident now, and things are going in for him. On the flip side, like I talked about this a little bit. I believe I talked about this with Derek, but I'd be curious to get your take. Like, at what point does Tom Wilson just like drop him? Like, he's been playing in the bottom 6. He's doing nothing. Like, I guess there's always the chance he can get back on a line with Ovechkin, but in the last game he was playing with Beck Malenstein and Nick Dowd, pointless in 7 games. He in the last game against Montreal yesterday, he also had 0 hits, 3 blocks somehow for Tom Wilson, but like 1 shot, 0 hits, no points, as he's been for the last 7 games. I don't think I'd be holding him if I had him in the cupful. He's still rostered in my division. I have him in a dynasty league where I'm allowed to just drop people. I don't have to worry about the contracts. The one I'm in with Victor, and I was already messaging Victor like, "Are we dropping this guy? Our fantasy playoffs start next week." I have no confidence that Wilson's going to do anything for us.
I made the case last week that Tom Wilson was a snoozer, and I'm standing by it, especially because like we haven't really seen Wilson get doghoused during his career, and now we're seeing that, and that just adds to the level of alarm. And maybe it's like I'm trying to think, one of these. It's like not quite a healthy scratch, but maybe it gets him going. But I don't know. Not a whole lot has gotten Wilson going, and as much as I continue to be stung by Cam Atkinson being healthy scratched and then like showing up for the first time all season, even that's died out for Atkinson. So like I still don't know a whole lot of examples where this is a motivational tactic that really unlocks a player. So there's still the possibility that Wilson's going to be good, but I don't think he's someone you need to hold on to while you wait. Alex Ovechkin, by the way, if you held on to him, you're happy now. He did nearly nothing for 25 games, so you're not to blame if you didn't hold on. But now Ovechkin's up to 18 points, 8 goals and 10 assists in his last 17 games. 7 of those 18 points, including 4 goals coming on the power play. Ovechkin's taken 49 shots over those 17 games. That's like 2.5 shots per game, which isn't great, right? Like, obviously, the 38-year-old Ovechkin still isn't his full self, but it's good to see signs of life. And what he's doing, which is point per game pace, 2.5, 3 shots per game, doesn't seem so unsustainable. He's shooting 17%, which isn't so crazy compared to his general conversion rate in his career. So it's nice to see Ovechkin rolling and going. And I'm hopeful that you're not going to see another giant dry spell, but the risk is like you're not totally out of the woods with Ovechkin, but you can hope that you are.
Yeah, and he's back on track to break that Gretzky record. Now he only needs like a 25 goal pace for the next couple seasons. So, things are looking up for Ovechkin. Okay, let's go to the next season here, back to Pittsburgh, who had the first overall pick in 2003. They took Marc-Andre Fleury. So we've talked about the Pens. Eric Stahl was picked next by Carolina. Then Nathan Horton was picked by the Panthers. Then the Columbus Blue Jackets took Nikolai Zheredev. Then the Sabres took Thomas Vanek. And then, Brian, our next team that we haven't talked about yet is the San Jose Sharks, who with the 6th overall pick back in 2003 took Milan Michalek, former Ottawa Senator. And he was part of the return on that trade where they sent Danny Heatley. It was a big deal at the time. I remember that trade very well. But anyway, yeah, let's go to San Jose, who right now do not have too many brand name players to talk about, especially with Hurdle and Couture injured. Lately, that's left Mikael Granlund to be centering the top line and to be on the top power play with Duclair and Zetterlund. And Granlund is getting a point, every game. He had an assist in the last game. He had a goal in the game before. Unfortunately, San Jose only plays Monday and then Saturday next week. So I feel like we're at a point where even Mikael Granlund would be a drop for me. I think anyone on San Jose is a drop right now, including even Mackenzie Blackwood, who continues to have some good games. He had a good game yesterday, so good for him.
Yeah, there's and Blackwood I think is still I've thought more than once. I'm not sure I've ever said it on the show. New Jersey needs a goalie. And Blackwood's doing great. Like it wasn't working for him there. But it's strange to see them so in need and Blackwood looking actually competent and capable for the first time in his career. Anyway, Blackwood is still worth rostering, except there's a big gap between games this upcoming week, so you'll have to decide whether it's worth holding him for that or not, depending on your format. Elon, you said you drop anyone on San Jose. I'm going to throw out one candidate to not drop, and that's William Eklund. He had 5 shots, but no points against Columbus on Saturday night. And coming into that game, Eklund had 7 points in his last 7 games. Not a lot of shots through the way, playing on the top power play, but not cashing in on the power play all the time. I don't think you need to keep him, but before you just cut everybody, I would at least say food for thought, consider holding on to William Eklund, but I think it's probably also extremely safe to go ahead and cut him.
Yeah, you could probably get him back by Saturday. But yeah, Granlund and Eklund are both guys I wouldn't mind having on my team. I'd probably even prefer Granlund, but yeah, Eklund's on a really nice run, obviously taking advantage of now being the main contributor on his line, aligned with Barabanov and Luke Kunin. And so he's doing well centering that line. I think he's centering. I don't know. Someone in the chat let me know if I'm wrong about that. Brian, next up, we are going to go to... Oh, wait, sorry. Okay, Brian, next up, we are going to go to 20... Oh, my God. I don't know what... Next up, we are going to go to 2002, but first we will take a quick break. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back, Brian. We're at the 2002 draft. The Columbus Blue Jackets had first overall. They took Rick Nash. He had a great career. We've already talked about Columbus. So next up, the Atlanta Thrashers. Remember them? They took Kari Lehtinen. And for those that aren't aware, the Atlanta Thrashers moved to Winnipeg. So we're going to go to Winnipeg and talk about this team that has a player that also cost me a matchup this week, along with Sean Dursey. Really could have used some help from Nikolai Ehlers. And if people are noticing a pattern, trust me, I am. But those are 2 people that I got in my trade where I traded away Alex Ovechkin. So, that doesn't feel great. I guess maybe I did lose that trade after all. So, Brian, your advice was good. Though I did win some weeks like after I made the deal, but definitely I lost this week because I made that deal. Because, man, Nikolai Ehlers, give me a break. Are we in snoozer territory for this guy now? Only 1 point in his last 7 games. He's off the top power play again. I hate this guy. He stinks. Give me something.
not pulling any punches on Nikolai Ehlers, but neither was I when I started to look into him to get ready for the show tonight. Like, where I was at was this is the season I've run out of patience with Nikolai Ehlers. And it's because usually, while he doesn't reach that
Why did
dream...
you change? Is that you're so mad at him that you decided you're going to change his pronunciation mid-sentence?
What did I do?
You said Nikolai Ehlers, like Lars Eller.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Ehlers.
That was like a sign of disrespect. You don't even get your proper pronunciation.
No. So yeah, he's more in the Lars class than the Nikolai class. No, that's not what I meant. Thanks for calling me on it. Usually Ehlers doesn't reach the upside that we've dreamt he should have. But even then, he's still like 70 or 80 points. And while it's frustrating that he can't quite break through, he's still good, right? We're not like staring at him being like, why? And this year, that's changed. This year, just a 57-point pace for Ehlers so far. But here's the thing. And like, there's always a thing with Ehlers. Like, here's why I'm not giving up completely. And like, how many times can we not give up completely on the guy? But again, he really hasn't let us down so terribly before. And I think one of the reasons that's happened this year for Ehlers is he's scored only 3 power play points through 52 games. That's crazy. Like that's bad. Even if you're not on the top unit, which Ehlers is frequently the case for Ehlers, even though he has been on the top unit too. Like he's been on the ice for 136 minutes of power play time. You don't need to like have a whole lot of context to know that in 136 power play minutes, he's only been on the ice for 4 goals. That's terrible. Ehlers himself, has no goals on 24 shots, even though he has 2.5 expected goals. While on the ice, the Jets have 4 goals on 108 power play shots. They're converting at a 3.5% shooting rate, and that's a quarter of what you might expect them to have. 4 goals versus 16 expected goals. And I think that's the difference, because if you make up the difference between what is actual and expected for the Jets on the power play with Ehlers on the ice, give them 12 more power play goals, say he points on 8 of them, and then Ehlers is on pace for 69 points. Like he's right there where he's always been. So I don't know if I'm crazy to like be like, I think he can still do it. But he's so frustrating. Like there's no deployment to rely on. Like sometimes with players like this, it's just easy to save yourself the stress. But then somebody else will be like, I'll take on the stress and I'll be okay. So Elon, are you convinced at all with the rational argument that Ehlers should actually be closer to a 70-point player through the back half of the season?
I mean, yeah, there's been parts of the year where he's done really well. I don't know. To me, it's like not as much about like if he's had bad shooting luck or whatever. To me, it's just like the deployment. And I like when he's on the top line. I like when he's on the top power play. I feel like maybe he'll get to be a 70-point player if there could be some more injuries again. Not that I want to wish any ill on the Winnipeg players, but I don't know. I don't know, Brian. I don't think I buy it with his current deployment.
I can't blame you.
All right, so let's
What
go.
would it take me to trade for Ehlers?
What would it take you? What do you
on
mean?
your
Like,
team?
Like, what do you have to give me?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's pretty deflating loss. I'm trying to like, power through here, Brian. Like, I think now I'm 2 games back with 4 weeks to go.
Yeah.
I have more points than all these people ahead of me, just by the way. But like, it's gonna be so I have the tiebreaker, but I'm gonna need to win probably all 4 and need some luck of like a couple people ahead of me losing at least 2. So what will it take? Like, I don't know. This is the kind of should I just like blow things up and just like go hard on the schedule for the next 4 weeks? Maybe, but I honestly like I don't know. I'd want someone really hot, I guess. Someone doing really well. I mean, I don't know. It's a very hard question. Like, offer me someone. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Would you take Fiala? I'm just looking at the guys we've talked about tonight.
Easy,
Okay.
easy.
Would you take Sam Bennett?
You know what? I might take Sam Bennett. I'd have to look at the schedule, of course.
Jeff Skinner?
Well, I mean, we're not doing much. Like, but I do like that Skinner's least on the top power play. So maybe I would. Yeah, I think I would maybe take Jeff Skinner.
Okay.
What
Palmieri?
about you? Do you agree?
Yeah, I would take
Palmieri.
Skinner.
Yeah, no, Palmieri probably. Palmieri was just out of free agency. I'd be too annoyed to be like, you can't just like grab Palmieri in the free agency and then trade him to me. It's so
okay.
rude.
Well, when we get to Drake Batherson, I'll ask you about that too.
Okay.
Who you prefer between Batherson and Ehlers? I think that's Ehlers. What am I doing? Yeah. Yeah.
You're crushing it. Okay, well, we're going to actually talk about Drake Batherson very soon because in 2001, Ilya Kovalchuk was taken first overall by the Atlanta Thrashers, a.k.a. the Winnipeg Jets. We just talked about them. And second overall was Jason Spezza, who the Ottawa Senators drafted after trading away Alexei Yashin for the pick. And they also got Zdeno Chara, so a pretty nice trade for who was the GM of Ottawa at that time? Who pulled off that gem of a trade?
Was it Marshall Johnston?
I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know. I assumed you would just like know off the top of your head. But anyway, your Ottawa Senators, Brian, that's the next team we go to. And yeah, Elisa wanted us to talk about Drake Batherson. Pretty straightforward question. Like, is it time to let go? Like, let's take a look at what Drake Batherson is doing. It is not great. I didn't realize, like, I knew he was on a bit of a cold streak, but he is pointless in his last 3. I'm looking at these shot counts, Brian. He hasn't taken more than 2 shots since like January 16th. Like, it's been like 12 games in a row of like 2 or less, and actually only 2 of those games were 2. All the rest of them are 1s and 0s. Like, the shots have totally disappeared from Drake Batherson. This is a guy who averaged 3 shots per game last year. This is a huge disappointment, and now he's also not getting even any assists. So Brian, what do we think about Drake Batherson? Do you see any reason? I mean, the reason, I guess, the obvious reason to still be into him is he's playing with like Brady Kachuk and Josh Norris. He's not. He hasn't been getting the top power play. Though I guess Ottawa kind of splits it pretty evenly. He's on the Stutzla power play, which normally you'd think is top, but the one with Giroux and Kachuk and Norris and Pinto and Jake Sanderson got more time in the last game. I don't want to get into the whole thing about the defense again because we talk about it all the time. And it always changes. But yeah, FYI, Jake Sanderson got the most power play time in the last game against Chicago. Anyway, Batherson. Should Elisa hold on, or is it time to move on?
I think, well, I don't have as much, let's just say I don't have as much faith in Batherson coming back to the form that we expected from him than I do Ehlers, which is like quite an indictment, right? Batherson's barely been shooting lately, just 11 shots total over Batherson's last 12 games, and he hasn't had more than 2 shots in a single game since January 16th. And this has been like kind of a theme with Batherson this season. Like his shots on goal have really yo-yoed this year, but they've been down more than they've been up. He's also lately been on the wrong side of power play timeshare more often than not lately. But at 5-on-5, like Elon, you mentioned, he's still on his usual line. It's really been a rough year for Batherson. Like I'm not losing hope completely, but coming into the season, we thought we were going to see a bounce back from Batherson after a couple years of like good play but bad variance. And but this year the variance is like evened out for Batherson, but the play hasn't continued or carried on. And I don't know that it's coming at this point now that we're, over 50 games into the season. So I think with Batherson, it's just take what you can get. I've seen him get dropped in the cupful, and I wouldn't be ready to drop him yet because I still think he probably outperforms most free agents for the rest of the season, or all free agents for the rest of the season. And there's still some high highs that I assume will come, even if it's just a few games at a time here and there. But it's been a slog for Batherson managers this year.
Yeah, I think if you're going for it now, I don't think you have you can't really wait, right? Like if you're in a playoff spot, it's our classic thing, right? Like he's someone I would hold unless like if there's a bad schedule this week and I need to drop someone to get a streamer and Batherson's my coldest player, it would be hard for me to drop someone who's doing stuff and hold Batherson, especially it's just those shots. It's so shocking, shot king, how you just look at that game log and there's never anything. Anyway, okay, so next we're going to the year 2000, and the Islanders took Rick DiPietro first overall, and then the Atlanta Thrashers took Danny Heatley. Oh, second Danny Heatley mention on the pod. And we've talked about both of those teams, but we have not talked about the team that went third overall, Marian Gaborik, a former Ottawa Senator. Brian, let's just make the show all about the Sens moving forward. But yeah, we could talk about Minnesota, who is like becoming a bit of like a wasteland for streaming because the top line is great. Kaprizov, Boldy, and Eriksson Ek, they've stacked it with their 3 best players. And so, good for them, but not good for anyone else. Brock Faber, we've definitely talked enough about him. So I guess I kind of have to throw another, theme of this episode is just a lot of like snoozer. But I guess now is snoozer talk time, right? Because it's like your stream, you need to like do what you can to maximize your points. You need to like drop people from your roster. So it's good. So we've talked about, Batherson just now. We've talked about Ehlers. Here's another one I got to throw at you, Brian. Mats Zuccarello. If he's not playing with Kaprizov, he's on the top power play, but he now only has 1 point in his last 5 games. How much patience would you have for Zuccarello, especially with him not being on the top line?
Not a whole lot, I have to say. And I've been someone who sort of holds on for Zuccarello and thinks there's value here, but off the top line, I'm really legitimately concerned about Matt Zuccarello. He's playing with Marcus and Marco, Johansson and Rossi at 5-on-5, and he's still on the top power play, where I think Zuccarello still has something to give. But at 5-on-5, I think he's looked pretty human this year, and he's really hasn't done anything in the last couple games since moving away from Kaprizov. As I'd expect. It really, it's a bit of a bummer that Minnesota's really consolidated, their 3 for sure relevant or line driving guys together, because it's really tanked the value. There used to be hey, Johansson could be valuable, or Rossi could be valuable, or Hartman could be valuable, or Zuccarello. But really, the value on the team has really shrunk with them putting Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov, and Boldy all together. So I still like Zuccarello. The reason I'd hold on to him if I'm invested is 1, he could find his way back to playing with Kaprizov, and 2, he's still on the top power play while you wait. But if nothing changes for the next little while, then I'm not sure Zuccarello will be valuable enough to you getting by on power play points alone.
Yeah, okay. So it's definitely a disappointment for someone who was like really great for a lot of the season. But yeah, Kaprizov is just so incredible. And he's definitely the straw that stirs the drink. Well, no, I guess actually no. Erickson, Ek, and Boldy also, but when they're all together, too bad for everybody else. Next up, Brian, we go to the year 1999. Let's party. Patrick Stefan was taken first overall by the Thrashers, and then we get another. This is easy, Brian. We're gonna catch every team. Actually, there's some teams we're definitely not gonna catch. I think it's a bit too late for Seattle at this point. We're gonna have to just shove them in. But Vancouver Canucks went second and third and got the Sedins. Classic couple picks for them. I'm just gonna continue to be Debbie Downer over here. Put on a bummer of a podcast. Another guy who was good for so long and is now on a super cold streak is Brock Besser. Pointless in 6 games. Where did this come from? Besser was just crushing it all the time. In his previous 3 games, he had 2 assists, then 3 goals and an assist, then 2 assists against Carolina. That was February 6th. And since then, like I said, 6 straight games of all zeros. At least he did have 5 shots yesterday versus Winnipeg. Before that, he was having a Batherson-esque 1 or 2 shot stretch for a little while. There's even a game where on February 8th against Boston, no points and no shots and only 1 hit to keep him from the cardio session. So yeah, it's been a bit of a disappointing run from Brock Besser. So I guess same question as with Batherson. Like, are we holding? Or I feel like with him, you have to hold.
You're holding.
Right?
Come on. I mean,
so what's happening?
We were going to see regression, right? He has 30 goals on 147 shots this season, which is 20% conversion rate, which is twice what he's had in 3 of the 4 seasons coming into this season. So like that's reasonable. Although like the power play production was high for him too. Like a lot of the high shooting percentages because of power play goals he's scored. But Brock Besser has only tallied on the power play 3 times in his last 26 games. So that's not great. Like if that continues, like if Brock can't find that power play goal scoring magic that he had for the first 30-ish games of the season, then yeah, it could be a much quieter time for Besser on the back end. But what's strange though is like no assists are coming either, and I expect those to be able to come back. Like you said, Elon, the 5-shot game is encouraging, and I would hold, and I'd have more faith in Besser bouncing back and having a really valuable rest of season versus Drake Batherson.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think now would be a great time to try to trade for Brock Besser. See if you can get him a little bit cheaper than usual. Next up, 1998, Brian. First overall, Vincent Lecavalier had a great career. I gotta just read this. This is kind of interesting. So he went to Tampa Bay. It says from Florida via San Jose. If you could just indulge me here, look at this. So San Jose acquired the first pick, and that it went to Tampa as a result of a trade that sent Brian Marchment and David Shaw to San Jose in exchange for Andrei Nazarov and Tampa's conditional right to swap first-round pick in 1998. And so that's how Tampa got the pick. And San Jose previously acquired this pick as the result of a trade in 1997 that sent Victor Kozlov and a conditional pick in exchange for Dave Lowry. So, which is, by the way, I think I've mentioned like a few like dads of players in the league now. Is Adam Lowry the kid of Dave Lowry? And is Mason Marchment the kid of Brian Marchment?
Might be one of those. Might be a nephew.
Okay.
I wasn't prepared for that question, but you know where I go if you are interested is Elite Prospects.
They have all the relationships.
Yeah, they do.
Handy.
Yeah.
Do they have friendships also? I remember at one point we were going to set that up.
That's going to be our golden goose one day.
Yeah. That's so wild that like a first overall pick was getting like that never happens. When's the last never in the history of this podcast, and I don't recall this. This maybe before I was paying too close attention. Like people just trading the first overall pick like it's nothing. Anyway, so we already talked about Tampa Bay. Anyways, long story short, but second overall pick went to the Nashville Predators, and they took David Legwand. So we can go to Nashville now, and you know what? This is gonna be quick, Brian. Like just like Minnesota, Nashville stacks the top line, doesn't leave too much fun for anyone else. Also, just like Minnesota, the top defenseman is awesome, and the rest of the defensemen are blah. So yeah, I don't really have anything to talk about in Nashville unless you do.
No, they've been a pretty easy team to just sort of, yeah, they're almost like, well, Zuccarello is new on Minnesota, but there's a couple teams where things don't really change. Nashville's been one of them.
Yeah, Tommy Novak's on a bit of a run right now.
Oh
But
yeah, I did want to mention that.
okay, there you go.
Because last week we mentioned how Novak was like just he was we saw the seeds of something, and early in the season we would have been really excited about that, but at this point he's been so quiet for so long that it didn't really matter. Um, or it mattered a little. Like he was sort of back on the radar, but we weren't sold. And he's continued. I just think it's worth mentioning. But he's on a run that ended on Saturday. We had 3 games in a row with a goal. He scored 3 goals on 5 shots. So there's still like not enough there. And then he only played, I don't know why, 10 minutes against St. Louis on Saturday. So the Novak hype train is still on hold, but it's still at the station.
Okay. What would happen if it was like no longer like we were not interested at all? It's like left the station, like it got dismantled or
The
something.
train would be decommissioned.
Right. Okay.
The route would be canceled.
All right. So everyone, our route still will continue for a little bit longer, but we'll take our final break and we'll come back and see if we can. How many more teams? Like I'm surprised we haven't gotten to a point yet where we're just like going for like 20 picks, waiting to talk about the next team. I'll be kind of curious to see when that happens. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a sec. Okay, Brian, we are back. We're in 1997. Joe Thornton, first overall to the Boston Bruins. The San Jose Sharks then took Patrick Marleau. That's kind of fun. I didn't ever put that together, that Thornton and Marleau got taken in the same draft. Long-time teammates, maybe friends. Too bad we don't have a website to find out. I'd imagine they're probably friends. LA Kings took Olli Jokinen third. The Islanders took Roberto Luongo. And then the Islanders then had another pick and took Eric Brewer. And next we get to our next team for us to talk about. The Calgary Flames took a guy named Daniel Tkachuk, but it's spelled differently. It has
With
a
a
Z
Z.
in it.
Yeah.
Who's this person?
He was great for Team Canada and the World Juniors.
Oh, never heard of him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
There was an era where it was easier to miss on a first round pick. And I wonder if that was like I'm sure someone's has written a much more thoughtful analysis of this. But I wonder if it's harder to miss now because like video is so ubiquitous and communication and scouting is like so easy and accessible because of all the new communications technologies. Whereas back then, you had to be there, word of mouth. And maybe it was like also like a less serious league on the whole.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be a fun thing to ask, like someone who knows, like what's the reason why there were so many more of these whiffs. Looks like Daniel Tkachuk played 19 NHL games, and that was it. And he had 11 points. It's not even that bad. Why couldn't he stick? Maybe he wasn't good defensively. I want to see the docu pic about Daniel Tkachuk now. But anyways, let's talk about the Flames. Let's talk about some current players in the NHL. Trev, our accountability czar / something else. He wanted us to talk about Sharon Govich. Now that the lines have settled a little bit with the Kuzmenko for Lindholm deal, he was talking about how now it's like not even like such a straight up, top line. Like it's hard to say Sharon Govich is on the top line. It's like they have 3 lines. They have the Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane line. They have the Kadri line with Pospisil and Zari. Then Hubert does with Sharon Govich and Kuzmenko. And then Sharon Govich is on the top power play, but he hasn't been as great lately. And he also mentioned that Calgary has a bad schedule coming up. So I'm just keeping this train going, Brian, of just talking about players on cold streaks. I'll get someone happy at some point. But yeah, Sharon Govich pointless in his last 3, only 1 point in his last 6. Are we just holding, or are we at a point now where he becomes someone that you could consider swapping out if the schedule doesn't fit for you?
I think you can swap him out, and this has been the answer in the past for Sharon Govich. So just because like he had a little run in between doesn't mean that his status has changed.
Harsh. He was like, when you say this is like, he has had an incredible season up until now. Like he went on, it wasn't just like a short run, right? Like ever since like November, he's been doing so well.
Yeah. Okay.
You weren't buying it.
Well, I remember I wasn't buying it at the time. You know what? Maybe I haven't given a completely fair reevaluation. I'm just like looking through the run that he was on, like just to make sure. Yeah, because I had my answer already. And then he had 23 points in 22 games between, early December and late January. Yeah, but he was shooting almost 30%. He had 15 goals on 54 shots. So Elon, I think I still had enough reason to not really be buying in. And with only 2 shots per night and you're shooting 28%, good luck. Like you're not going to out volume that. And then he followed like on now this cold stretch he's on. Sharangovich is really just taking 1 or 2 shots a game most times. I know he has 7 shots over his last 2 games against Detroit and San Jose. But he'll have to keep doing that for me to get like legitimately interested again. But he did really well for a lot of people who had him, and I think this is more a situation where you say thanks and move on.
Okay, interesting. See ya. Yeah, Calgary just got spanked by Detroit, right? And are we ever going to talk about Detroit? We'll see. Also, by the way, Rasmus Andersson is cold again, but we already talked about him recently. You still had faith in him. I assume you still do.
Well, I said that Rasmus Andersson was still doing pretty well for someone off power play 1, but you can't obviously like absorb a whole lot more of nothing from Rasmus Andersson if the like potential or upside or deployment isn't like returned. Like you've got to either have the points coming or the deployment, and it's hard to trust a guy who doesn't have both of those things coming consistently.
Yeah, Andersson pointless in 7 now. He did get 60% of power play time in that game against Detroit. So maybe that's going to be the trigger of something changing. 4 shots. But yeah, it's been a while since we've seen Rasmus Andersson on the score sheet. All right. So we just talked about the Joe Thornton draft. So let's go to 1996. Ottawa Senators had the first overall pick, and they picked Chris Phillips, who I know him very well as a Sens fan at the time. Was that considered, Brian, do you know, is that considered a good pick? In hindsight, he played his whole career in Ottawa. I don't think he was ever a star in the league, but I don't know. I'm looking at the other player. In retrospect, do people think do people say that was a good pick, or do they think Ottawa blew that pick?
Well, I think there were a couple directions that the franchise could have gone at that point, and this sort of pushed them in one. I don't think he was ever. I think there was thought that Phillips. I mean, is this really that interesting? I think there was thought that Phillips could have some upside offensively, and that's what made him worthwhile. But I mean, you look at how far do you have to go down the draft list from 1996 to find the guy that you would have rather had? I'm gonna go. You stop me. Andre Zuzin, J.P. Dumont, Alexander Volchkov, Richard Jackman, Boyd Devereaux, Eric Rasmussen.
This is good. I'm looking at the list now. It's going to take you too long.
Yeah, it is. Where are we going?
Marco Sturm at 21 had a better career.
Marco Sturm at 21, and then Daniel Briere at 24, drafted by Phoenix. What a draft.
What a crap draft.
Holy cow. I'm into the second round.
Chara was picked in round 3, I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best pick. That should have been who Ottawa took. They got him anyways. They got him eventually.
I think they knew they would, and that's why they drafted Phillips.
Okay. Pavel Kubina went in round 7. He had a decent career. Thomas Kaberle in round 8.
Wow. The 1996 draft. Was it the worst? It was really bad. Yeah.
Anyways, as far as for our purposes, let's see if we can get to a team to talk about. So Ottawa took Phillips, like you said. The Sharks took Zuzin. Islanders took Dumont. Capitals took Volchkov. And then we got the Dallas Stars taking Rick Jackman. Rick, just R-I-C. You don't see that too often. Rick without a K. But anyways, let's go to Dallas because they're a team that we haven't discussed yet. Here's what I wrote in my notes. How much money is Matt Duchene going to make next season? He is just he got bought out, and then Dallas got him on this cheap deal. It's $3 million, and he is just scorching hot at a really nice time. It's pretty nice for a 33-year-old to be UFA and be having one of his better seasons. He's with the multi-point games this week. He had 3 straight multi-point games, including 1 goal and 2 assists versus Edmonton. That's brought him above point per game. So Duchene is at an 84-point pace. His highest ever was in Nashville, actually just a couple seasons ago, where he hit a 90-point pace. So we'll see if he can beat it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. Is he good? Because at the same time, he just got bought out. I wonder if teams are going to be wary, or is he going to be getting $6-7 mil on a 2 to 3 year deal? I feel like he deserves it.
Yeah, that's what I wonder. I don't think he's going to get that much. I don't think teams are ready to make that kind of potential mistake, especially because Duchene is, I think, an additional piece, not a centerpiece on a contender, and contenders don't have that kind of space. And maybe Duchene is ready to take a discount to play for a team that has a chance. But if a team is signing Duchene with the thought, regardless of how much they pay for him, if they're signing him with the thought that he's going to repeat next year what he's doing this year, they should think again. This season, Duchesne is shooting 16.5%, which is the second highest number of his career since that giant year that Duchesne had in Ottawa before being dealt to Columbus in, oh yeah, contract year. That was also a contract year. 2 contract years, 2 career high shooting percentages for Matt Duchesne. So either he's got some horseshoes up his tuchus, or it's just a coincidence. Like he didn't do well in his last contract year in Nashville, right? So you could put that theory to bed before you just call Matt Duchesne like, oh, selfish player who only ever plays for himself. His on-ice shooting percentage also high in Dallas, which we've talked about. But still, I'm going to give it to Duchesne. He's good enough to get lucky, right? Like there is still something to that. And he's still, like, he's 33 years old. He's making $3 million this year. I wonder if this does help him to one last, juicy-ish contract for 2 or 3 years term. I don't know. Like I want to see. I'm curious. I don't know if any of the contract models have been released, Elon, on what Duchesne is assumed to receive. Do you know?
I mean, I don't know, but like what models have been released, I just think, yeah, it'll probably also depend on like how the rest of the season goes. Obviously, the playoffs, is he going to be a big part of like a Dallas Stars Cup run, which like Dallas has been so incredible lately, so it's definitely possible. But anyways, yeah, just an incredible season for him. I think I mentioned it before. No one told me to the contrary, so I'm gonna say I'm pretty sure the best season I've ever seen from a player who was bought out. Like a lot better than like Kevin Shattenkirk. Like Kevin Shattenkirk is someone who was bought out and then still has had a decent career, but nothing like this. Anyway. Let's go to the next draft, Brian. We're running out of teams here, but we're still going until we get through them all. Except for, I guess, like I said, Seattle. I don't think we're going to hit Vegas at this point, so we'll just have to catch those at the end. But so we just talked about Ottawa drafting Chris Phillips in 1995. Ottawa also had the first pick, and they took Brian Berard, though they ended up trading him at some point for Wade Redden, who Islanders took second. Was that just like they just swapped picks? I don't remember how that went. But I definitely know that Ottawa had Wade Redden for most of his, So you could remind the listeners at some point. But anyways, third overall, the Kings took Aki Berg, and then fourth overall, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim took Chad Kilger. So we can go talk about Chad Kilger's former team, the Anaheim Ducks. The big news out of Anaheim is that Alex Killorn is back, and he came back just in time to get absolutely destroyed by the Toronto Maple Leafs. But he did fine, at least for fantasy. He had an assist, 2 shots, 7 hits. He's not usually such a big hitter. So I think Killorn is someone you might want to get back in your lineup. I could tell you the lines from the last game, but after that loss, like you got to imagine Anaheim's going to be trying something new next time. So he'll be somewhere in the top 6. And, right now it's Vetrano who's really hot. I guess you want to get the guy playing with Vetrano. Ryan Strome, I think I mentioned at some point, is on a bit of a run right now. So I think Anaheim has a lot of players that are sort of like maybe borderline. But I think Killorn is someone I'd be into, like grabbing him. Especially if you can fit a lot of Anaheim games, then Killorn has been solid all year, and I don't see why he can't continue it.
Yeah, exactly. Solid. Elon is funny for you. You haven't been a big Killorn believer, and I don't blame you. Like there's been some moments where he's been quiet, but top line, top power play. When he's been in that position, he's sort of like can be an on and off kind of player, like one game on, one game off. But that evens out to like pretty reasonable value out of free agency, and he hits. Sometimes he shoots. So yeah, I would be keeping an eye. 7 hits in Killorn's return, along with an assist and 2 shots in 19 minutes of ice. So not being eased in, except not on the top power play yet either. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Okay, and so I'm looking at our list of...
Well, I also, sorry, before I forget, Adam Lowry, Dave Lowry's son, Mason Marchment, Brian Marchment's son,
Boom,
and Brian Berard was traded for Wade Redden, in part because Berard requested a trade. He went to training camp, and I think it was like Ottawa wanted to send him back to junior, and he was like, "No, I don't want to," and so that was it.
Come on, well, whatever. But I'm saying whatever too much. Come on. Anyway, I guess I thought of something like dark I could say, because I know that eventually someone in Ottawa like injured him very badly, but hopefully that wasn't in retaliation That's like a stupid thing to
what
say.
a ridiculous.
What a
Are you
stupid-
going to
this
cut
is- I don't-
that?
This is how my brain works. I can't help it. I don't think I need to cut it because I'm saying as I said it that it's a stupid thing to say. But anyway,
I mean, it doesn't. Okay.
so I cut it. Okay, I'll cut it. All right.
I
so
think
I'll
you.
just
Could, I think you
all
could
right.
probably.
That's
cut
just for the
it.
video. That's just for the video.
Oh, yeah, that's a YouTube special
Yeah.
right
Come
there.
on. You missed out on some great years, Brian Berard. You could have had a really fun time with the Sens. All right, so Brian, I'm looking at our list of teams here. Aside from Vegas and Seattle, who obviously aren't going to get picked, I guess our big loser here in terms of the team that's had the worst draft luck, 'cause there's only one other team, it's Detroit. So Shams said in the chat here, this is why I hate the lottery. It hurts to not hear the Wings brought up after all those rebuilding years. Yeah, obviously around this time, the Wings were good. But I guess let's finish the exercise. So 1994, we are finally going to get to Detroit at some point. So here we go. Ed Jovanovski first to Florida. The Ducks took Tverdovsky. Sens took Radek Bonk. Oilers Bonsignor. Sorry, I had his hockey card too. I knew this guy. Hartford Whalers took Jeff O'Neill. Oilers Ryan Smith. Kings Jamie Storr. Lightning Jason Weimer. Islanders Brett Lindros. Capitals Nolan Baumgartner. Sharks Jeff Friesen. Nordiques Wade Belak. Canucks Matthias Oland. Chicago Ethan Moreau. Did Detroit even take a play? Okay, I'm just going to skip. 23rd overall, the Detroit Red Wings took Jan Golubovsky. So that's how we finish this off. I wonder if that guy ever played in the league. I wonder if he played more games than that Kachuk with the Z.
Then Daniel's his name. Jan
Oh, yeah,
Golubovsky played 56 games, but had fewer points than Kachuk. Eight points, a goal and 7 assists.
Well, they blew, but Detroit was fine. They won a few cups since that pick. But yeah, so I guess the big news out of Detroit right now for fantasy is that James Reimer had a shutout. This is kind of like the LA conversation, right? Like it's like, but except like Alex Lyon, I was so high on, and now I'm all of a sudden wondering, like, maybe do you have to drop Alex Lyon, especially if you're thinking like short term? Like Alex Lyon is now on a cold streak, which is like, bound to happen eventually. But his last couple of games have been not great, letting in 4 and 7 goals. And then in the meantime, Reimer came in and shut out the Flames. So now maybe like Reimer gets the next game. I don't know. Just like, like Brian, like I told you, now I have Alex Lyon on my team. I also have Cam Talbot. I should probably drop one of them. I don't know. I wonder if Lyon gets the next game or if Reimer gets the next game.
I actually. Okay, hang on. Before I say anything, I think all that stuff that comes on the ticker on Frozen Pools.
Yeah.
Where can I see it like all together, not on a ticker?
I don't.
Like there has to be somewhere that it's
news.
Just,
like they have a news.
Where? I don't see the news.
So under research,
player news feed. Okay.
Okay.
So so Lyon is apparently already confirmed. According to Helen St. James.
All right, so you could answer with that. That's perfect.
It looks like okay, sorry. Elon, it looks like we already know. Alex Lyon is slated to start, according to Helen St. James of the Detroit Free Press, via Frozen Pool, is going to start on Monday against Seattle, which I would expect. I don't think Reimer is able to string together so many good starts in a row, but I mean the door has opened, right? Lyon has crashed back to earth, 17 goals against in his last 4 appearances, and that's against Ottawa, Vancouver twice, and Edmonton. Combined 840 save percentage over those 4 appearances. But again, like I said, Reimer I don't think can hold on for so long, so I would still say that it's Alex Lyon's net. And maybe he sits a couple more games than he otherwise would have if Reimer can actually keep playing once or twice, well in a row. But yeah, I still think Alex Lyon is worth holding on to.
Okay, I'm with you. Hold him for Monday. Reassess after that. Thanks for getting that tip there. Do we have that tweet retweeted on GameDayTweets.com? Let me see. Goalie tweets for tomorrow. Oh, we got to get that retweeted there.
You got scooped.
Oh no, we got scooped by Frozen Tools.
Do you know Frozen Tools? I didn't notice. They have a Game Day Lines link on every player's bio.
Nah, that's nice. I linked
Yeah.
to Frozen Tools on every team page. You can look
Yeah,
at the last
it's
game
right
lines.
there under like season forward lines. You know that
I think
little
that
grid?
I think that he told me at one point that he was going to do that. Thanks, Eric. All right. So, Brian, with that, we've covered every team except for Vegas. Okay, so Vegas, everything's the same as like the top line is still doing great. So, just more and more evidence to want Barbashev to want Nick Waugh because they just keep producing. And then in Seattle, they're also the same as usual. So, I don't know. Do you have any general thoughts about our two expansion teams before we wrap this baby up?
I will just at least give mention to Matty Beniers, who was against me in the cupful this week and put up 4 points in his last 2 games, including a 3-point effort at Boston, a goal and 2 assists. Only 4 shots over those 2 games, but hey, the damage was done. So Matty Beniers hasn't been doing a whole lot, but I don't know. I was going to say at least this validates the possibility that he's a stream. But even then, it's like I still don't know I'd really elevate him above anybody else in Seattle, except he is playing with McCann and Eberle at 5-on-5, which is what you want if you are looking for a Seattle guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how Beniers finishes out the season. If he ends hot, that will make him kind of interesting for next year. Because I think at some point he's going to be a guy you want in fantasy. If we thought it was going to be this year, I imagine it'll happen at some point. When he starts hitting his mid-20s at the very least, or at the very most. Brian, this has been such a fun time going through all the teams, learning about some of the fabled draft picks. We made it all the way to 1990. That would have been a fun question for us to try to tackle at the beginning. Like, how many years will we need to go before we've covered every team? Turned out it was back to 1994, the Ed Jovanovski draft. So thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this format. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson if you have any feedback. I say that instinctually, but actually, I say
Instinctively.
I say that instinctively. To be honest, we don't really go that much on Twitter anymore. Our Twitter does automatically tweet out the episodes now whenever we post them, so that's a good. But yeah, sorry for not too much content over there, but I'm having a lot of fun on Twitter, just retweeting all the lines and news and goalies along with Shams for GameDayTweets.com. So you don't even need to go to Twitter, right? You just go to GameDayTweets.com and you can see the fruits of our labor. But yeah, hope you like this show. If you're a patron, let's talk about it in the Discord. Let us know what you agree with, what you don't agree with. If you want to become a patron, join our really fun community. You could join at any time, even now, and you can leave at any time. So why not try it out? KeepingKarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Patty, Ricard, Dusty, David, Ryan, Tom, Zachary, Andrea, Sammy, Ivan, Philip, Aaron, Patrick, Michael, Don, Roman, Top, Cheese, Lucas, and Ryan. Thank you all for your super support, and thank you to all our patrons again for keeping the episodes coming. Thank you to Kevin Hebert, our couple coordinator, and his army of bots who keep us all on our toes and keep things running smoothly. Thank you, Elon and Shams, for all you're doing to keep the fantasy news coming on GameDayTweets.com. Thank you to our Short Shifts hosts, who you can follow on Twitter at ShortShiftsKK. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Leap Prospects, and Yahoo.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Great job as always. This has been a really fun couple of hours spending with you, talking through what's going on in the NHL. I'm already very excited to do this again next week. What should I do in anticipation while I wait?
I hope you really will do whatever it is that you can do to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone. I know you want tangible. You want tangible.
What do I do? No, I'm just no. That's
you just
great.
be nice to people.
I don't know why you said that. I want tangible suggestions.
Yeah,
it's great. It's a great catchphrase because it's kind of like the NHL's catchphrase, which a lot of people then give them crap for.
They
being
don't.
You don't.
They don't mean
act it.
Yeah.
But we mean it. But you might say what do we do? But we don't do anything bad. At least we're not banning people from putting a pride flag in their team logo. So. We have that over the NHL.
Wow, we are so great.
All right. This was great. I pronounced Alisa's name correctly.
Yeah, I
this
noticed.
week.
Great job. I'm proud of you.
What was the thing that she said that it was like when they said it incorrectly? It was like it rhymed with something, and then people would call her like Alyssa something.
I think it was pizza.
Elisa Pizza. That's how you.
Yeah.
That was.
But why? Why? But I think she wants to move on from that.
Well, yeah, this is off the air. Well,
Oh.
It's on. This is again a YouTube special. All right. Well, thanks everyone.
What
Hope
a
you like-
show!
What a show.
Get some sleep,
I'm gonna
would
go have some
you?
cereal.
Get some R&R.
I can't. I have to edit this show.
You can have your boring oatmeal cereal.
It's not boring. Those are oatmeal's in the morning, cereal's at night.
Your
Come on,
tasteless,
Brian.
yeah, but it's like your Chex or All Bran or something.
Yeah, but then with fruits.
You know what I'm gonna
and
do?
with some nuts.
I'm gonna go have
What?
some Captain Crunch. That's what I'm gonna do.
Come on, it's not good for you, Brian. All right, thanks everyone.
Can you
See
tweet a
pal.
picture of your cereal or share it? Share it in the KK episode
Okay.
discussion
I will. And
with a
it'll look
recipe.
good.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try to remember to do that.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.